They dragged her through the snow in chains, not for murder, not for treason, for being defective. The Alpha King himself, the man who once whispered promises against her skin, stood before his entire court and declared Vireya Solin worthless. Broken. A stain on the royal bloodline. He stripped her name, her rank, her future. Then he exiled her to the frozen borderlands where nothing survived. But Vireya didn't die. And when an enemy king crossed into forbidden territory searching for her, the woman everyone discarded, she realized her story was just beginning. Stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Drop a comment with your city below. The iron collar bit into Vireya's throat as the guard shoved her forward. Her knees hit the frozen courtyard stones hard enough to split skin. Blood bloomed dark against the ice, but she didn't make a sound. Wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Around her, the entire court of Solendra had gathered. Nobles in their silk and furs, warriors in ceremonial armor. Servants pressed against the colonnade pillars, craning their necks to witness the spectacle. Even the kitchen staff had abandoned their posts. Everyone wanted to see the broken alpha female get what she deserved. Vireya Solin. King Theron's voice carried across the courtyard, cold and absolute. He stood on the dais above her, his ceremonial cloak rippling in the bitter wind. The man she'd loved. The man who'd promised her a crown. The man currently sentencing her to death. You stand accused of the gravest crime an alpha can commit, Theron continued. His pale eyes, once warm when they looked at her, were now chips of Arctic ice. You're defective, broken. Your bloodline carries weakness that threatens the purity of our kingdom. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vireya kept her gaze fixed on the ground, on her own blood soaking into the cracks between stones. 3 years, Theron said. 3 years you concealed your deficiency. 3 years you deceived this court, this kingdom, and your king. Liar. The word burned in Vireya's throat, but she swallowed it down. He'd known. From the very beginning, he'd known she was different, that her alpha nature manifested strangely, that her power didn't roar like other alphas. It whispered, flickered, sometimes vanished entirely for weeks at a time. He'd called it intriguing once, mysterious. He'd traced the constellation of scars along her spine, marks from a childhood infection that should have killed her, and told her she was stronger for surviving. That was before he needed a political alliance more than he needed a wife. Lady Serana emerged from the crowd, her silver gown pristine, her golden hair elaborately braided. Theron's new intended, pure bloodline, powerful family connections, everything Vireya wasn't. Serana's smile was sharp as a blade as she took her place beside the king. The council has deliberated, Theron announced, and the verdict is unanimous. Vireya Solin, you are hereby stripped of your rank, your name, and all rights afforded to members of the Alpha class. The words landed like physical blows. Vireya's fingers curled against the frozen stone. Furthermore, Theron continued, you are banished to the Frostmark borderlands, effective immediately. You will carry no provisions, no protection, and no mercy. May the frozen wastes judge you more kindly than this court has. Someone in the crowd laughed. Others joined in. The sound built like a wave, crashing over her in mockery. Counselor Dren stepped forward, his ancient face carved from disgust. In his hands, he carried a ceremonial knife, the breaker's blade used only for the most shameful exiles. Your mark, he said flatly. 2 guards hauled Vireya to her feet, held her steady while Dren approached. She knew what came next. Every exiled alpha bore the same brand. A vertical line scored down the center of their forehead, from hairline to the bridge of the nose. The mark of the broken. Permanent. Undeniable. A warning to anyone who looked at her. This one is worthless. Dren raised the blade. Vireya met his eyes. Do it, she said. Her first words since they'd dragged her from her chambers that morning. Her voice came out steady, strong. She wouldn't beg. The blade came down. Cold steel split her skin. Blood ran hot down her face, over her nose, dripping from her chin. The crowd went silent, watching the mark take shape. Dren didn't stop at one clean cut. He pressed harder, carving deeper, making sure the scar would be thick and ugly, making sure everyone would see it. Vireya didn't flinch. When he finally stepped back, her face was a ruin of blood. But she stood straight, head high. Take her, Theron ordered, turning away, already dismissing her from his mind. Get her out of my sight. The guards dragged her toward the northern gates. Through corridors she'd once walked as a lady of the court, past rooms where she'd laughed, studied, trained. They stripped her of her fine clothes and dressed her in rough-spun wool, took her shoes, left her with nothing but a thin cloak that wouldn't survive a single night in the borderlands. At the gates, Captain Yoris, a man who'd taught her swordplay years ago, looked away as they removed her shackles. Move, he said quietly, before they change their minds and decide exile is too merciful. Vireya looked back one last time, at the soaring towers of Solendra's palace, at the city she'd called home. Then she turned north and started walking. Checked out. The Frostmark borderlands earned their name honestly. Within an hour, the road disappeared beneath snowdrifts. Within 2, the temperature dropped so severely that Vireya's breath crystallized in the air before her face. The wind howled like something alive, tearing at her inadequate cloak, finding every gap in the wool to slice against her skin. She kept walking. Her feet went numb first, then her hands. The mark on her forehead throbbed with each heartbeat, blood freezing in crusty trails down her face. This is where you die, a voice whispered in her head. This is where they sent you to die. Maybe. Probably. But she'd been close to death before. That childhood infection, the one that left scars along her spine and supposedly corrupted her bloodline, had burned through her for 3 months. Healers told her mother to prepare for burial. She'd survived anyway. The sun sank below the horizon, and the temperature plummeted further. Vireya's legs shook with each step. Her lips cracked and bled. Hypothermia crept through her veins like slow poison. She spotted a cluster of rocks ahead, barely a shelter, but something. Stumbling forward, she collapsed behind the largest boulder, pulling her cloak tight. The wind screamed across the wasteland. Snow piled against her makeshift shelter. The cold pressed in from all sides, patient and relentless. Vireya closed her eyes. Not like this, she thought. I didn't survive everything just to freeze to death in the first night. But her body had different ideas. The shaking slowed. Her breathing grew shallow. That dangerous warmth, hypothermia's final lie, began to spread through her chest. She was drifting when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Her eyes cracked open. Hallucination, probably. Nothing lived out here. Nothing traveled these lands, especially not at night. But the sound grew louder, closer. Riders. Multiple horses. Moving fast across the frozen ground. Vireya tried to sit up and failed. Her muscles wouldn't respond. She could only watch as dark shapes materialized from the blizzard, riders in heavy furs and armor, their breath fogging in the frigid air. The lead rider raised a hand. The group halted. He dismounted in one fluid motion and approached her shelter. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the predatory grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime in battle. He crouched beside her and Vireya got her first clear look at his face. Sharp features, dark hair frosted with snow, eyes like smoke, gray and restless and dangerous. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a permanently skeptical expression. "Well," he said. His voice was deep, accent unfamiliar. "You're harder to find than I expected." Vireya blinked at him. Definitely a hallucination. Had to be. "Who?" Her voice came out as barely a rasp. "Draven Kalor." He pulled off one of his gloves and pressed his bare hand against her forehead. His palm burned like a brand against her frozen skin. "King of Ashenvale, and you're Vireya Solon, or you were before your own people threw you away like garbage." Not a hallucination. Worse. Draven Kalor, the Shadow King, ruler of Solendra's most feared enemy nation, the man whose armies had decimated 3 kingdoms in the last decade, whose reputation for ruthlessness made children cry and warriors wake screaming. He was here, in the borderlands, looking for her. "Come to finish the job?" Vireya managed. Something flickered across his face, almost like amusement. "If I wanted you dead, I'd have let the cold do it." He stood, snapping orders to his men. "Get her on a horse. Carefully. She's half frozen already." Strong hands lifted her. Someone wrapped her in furs that smelled of smoke and pine. They settled her in front of a rider, Draven himself, she realized, and his arm locked around her waist to keep her upright. "Wait," Vireya said. "Why?" "Questions later. Survival now." Draven spurred his horse forward. "Move out!" The riders surrounded them in a protective formation and plunged back into the storm. Vireya's head spun. This made no sense. Enemy kings didn't cross into hostile territory to rescue exiled women. They didn't risk international incidents to save anyone, let alone someone marked as defective and worthless. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Home," Draven said, "to Ashenvale." "That's not my home." "It is now." His arm tightened around her as the horse navigated a steep drift. "Unless you'd prefer I turn around and leave you to freeze." She should say yes, should demand he return her to the borderlands. She'd been exiled. Accepting help from an enemy king would be seen as treason, not that she had any loyalty left to Solendra. But the cold had nearly killed her, and Draven's warmth against her back was the first comfort she'd felt in days. "Why?" she whispered. He was silent for a long moment. Then, "Because Ashenvale is dying, and you're the only one who can save it." They rode for 3 days. Draven's men traveled with military precision, stopping only when absolutely necessary. They shared their rations with Vireya, dried meat, hard bread, water from leather flasks, gave her a spare cloak lined with fur, tended to the wound on her forehead with surprising gentleness. None of them spoke to her. They watched her with wary eyes, these battle-hardened warriors, like she might explode at any moment. On the second night, camped in a narrow canyon that provided some protection from the wind, Vireya finally cornered Draven. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "What do you want from me?" He looked up from the map he'd been studying. They were alone. He'd sent his men to establish a perimeter. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the spot across from him. Vireya remained standing. Draven's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Stubborn. Good. You'll need that." He rolled up the map. "How much do you know about Ashenvale's current situation?" "Only what everyone knows. Your kingdom is wealthy, powerful. Your armies are unmatched. You've conquered half the continent." Conquered, past tense. He stood, moving to the fire. Shadows played across his face, making him look older, tired. "We were powerful. 2 years ago, something changed. A corruption spread through the land. It started in the southern provinces, crops rotting overnight, livestock dying, water sources turning toxic. He crouched by the flames, holding his hands out to the heat. "We thought it was a plague at first. Tried quarantine. Didn't help. The corruption spread north, consuming everything in its path. Now it's reached the capital itself. Children are dying, Vireya. Hundreds of them. Our healers are helpless. Our mages can't even identify what's causing it." "And you think I can?" Vireya laughed, bitter. "I'm defective, broken. Did you miss the mark?" She gestured to her forehead, where the brand had scabbed over but would scar permanently. "I know exactly what you are." Draven met her eyes. "You survived an infection that kills 90% of those it touches. You carry power that manifests differently than typical alphas. And 3 months ago, one of my scouts saw you in Solendra's markets." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather journal. "You were helping a street vendor. His daughter had fallen ill. Same fever you survived as a child. Everyone said she'd die. The healers refused to waste their time." He opened the journal, showing her a sketch. A girl, maybe 6 years old, covered in the telltale rash. "You put your hands on her. My scout said you glowed, faintly, like starlight under skin." Vireya's breath caught. She remembered that day. Remembered the vendor's desperate eyes, the little girl's shallow breathing. She'd acted on instinct, pressed her palms against the child's burning forehead and wished as hard as she could. Poured everything she had into that silent prayer for healing. The fever had broken within hours. "The girl lived," Draven continued, "completely recovered. No one could explain it, and you didn't tell anyone what you'd done. Because they would have..." Vireya stopped, swallowed hard. "They would have called it corruption, evidence that I was defective. Theron was already looking for reasons to annul our engagement." "Theron is a fool." Draven closed the journal. He threw away the one person who could have saved his kingdom too. "The corruption is in Solendra?" "Everywhere." He stood, moving closer. Every kingdom on the continent is suffering, some worse than others. But Ashenvale, we're at the epicenter. Whatever this is, it's strongest in my land. So you need a healer. I need you. He stopped just outside arm's reach. There's a prophecy, ancient, about a woman marked by survival who would rise when the corruption threatened to consume everything. A woman who walks between life and death, who carries light in her blood. Prophecies are stories, Vireya said. Children's tales. Maybe, but I'm out of options. For the first time, she heard something vulnerable in his voice. 20 children died last week. 20. I can't. He stopped, drew a breath. I can't watch my people suffer anymore. Vireya studied him. This man, this ruthless conqueror, looked genuinely broken. Even if I could help, she said slowly, why would I? Ashenvale is Solendra's enemy. Helping you would be… Treason? Draven laughed without humor. You're already exiled, already marked as worthless. Solendra has no claim on your loyalty anymore. He paused. But I'm not asking you to act out of revenge. I'm offering you a choice. What choice? Come to Ashenvale as my queen. Not as a prisoner, not as a servant, as an equal. He held her gaze. Help me save my people, and I'll give you everything Theron took away. Power, purpose, a place where you're valued instead of discarded. You want to marry me? Vireya's voice came out flat with disbelief. You don't even know me. I know enough. You're strong, resilient, and you have a gift for healing that my kingdom desperately needs. He tilted his head. Besides, I'm not proposing love. I'm proposing a partnership. You help Ashenvale survive, and you get a crown, resources, and freedom to be who you actually are. It was insane, completely insane. An enemy king offering her a crown, a dying kingdom betting its survival on a woman everyone else called defective, a prophecy that probably didn't even exist. But what was her alternative? Die alone in the borderlands? Spend the rest of her life hiding in some distant province, always looking over her shoulder? One condition, Vireya said. Draven raised an eyebrow. Name it. If I do this, if I try to help your people and fail, you let me leave. No imprisonment, no forced marriage. I walk away free. He considered this, then extended his hand. Agreed. She looked at his outstretched palm, scarred from battle, strong, steady. She took it. His grip was warm, certain. Welcome to Ashenvale, Vireya. He smiled. A real smile this time, not the guarded expressions he'd shown before. Try not to let them kill you in the first week. They're going to hate me, she said. Oh, absolutely. He released her hand. You're a foreigner, an exile. And most of my court thinks prophecies are nonsense. They'll test you, challenge you, and probably try to undermine you at every turn. You're really selling this. I believe in honesty. He moved back to the fire. But I also believe you're stronger than they expect. Theron was an idiot for throwing you away. His loss is my gain. Vireya touched the mark on her forehead. In Solendra, it meant shame, worthlessness. Maybe in Ashenvale, it could mean something different. Maybe she could become someone different. When do we arrive? She asked. Tomorrow night. Draven poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling into the dark sky. Get some sleep. You'll need your strength for what comes next. They crossed into Ashenvale territory as the sun climbed toward noon. The border was marked by ancient stone pillars carved with warnings in 3 languages. Beyond them, the landscape shifted. Less snow, more bare rock and twisted trees that looked like they'd been frozen mid-scream. The corruption, Draven said, noticing her stare. It affects the land first, then the animals, then people. Vireya's stomach turned. The trees weren't just dead. They were wrong. Their bark had a sickly gray-green tint. Dark sap oozed from cracks in the wood, pooling at the bases like infected wounds. As they rode deeper into Ashenvale, the signs of devastation grew worse. Entire fields lay barren. Villages stood half-abandoned. The few people they passed looked gaunt, hollow-eyed. A woman stood outside a small house, holding a child wrapped in blankets. She looked up as they passed. Please, she called out. Please, my son. Draven reined his horse to a stop. dismounted. Vireya started to follow, but one of his men, Commander Revik, she'd learned, put a warning hand on her arm. "Your Majesty shouldn't," Revik began. "I know." Draven approached the woman anyway. "Show me." She pulled back the blanket. The boy couldn't have been more than 4. His skin had that same gray-green tint as the dying trees. Dark veins spiderwebbed across his face and arms. His breathing came shallow and labored. "It started 3 days ago," the woman whispered. "Please." "The healers say there's nothing they can do." Draven crouched beside them, pressed his hand gently against the boy's forehead. The child whimpered, but didn't wake. "I'm sorry," Draven said quietly. "I don't have the power to heal this, but I'm bringing someone who might." He looked back at Vireya. The woman's gaze followed his, landed on Vireya's face, on the mark. Her expression hardened. "An exile? She's supposed to save us?" "She survived what he's fighting," Draven said. "She carries immunity in her blood. If anyone can help, it's her." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "When?" "Soon." He stood. "Keep him comfortable. Keep him warm. Don't give up." He remounted without another word. They rode on. Vireya's hand shook inside her new gloves. That child, that mother's desperate hope. What if she failed? What if the healing she'd done before was a fluke? What if— "Stop," Draven said. She looked at him. "Stop spiraling. I can hear you thinking from here." He kept his eyes forward. "You're afraid. That's good. Fear means you care, but don't let it paralyze you. What if I can't help him? Any of them? Then we find another way." His voice was steady, certain. "But I've spent 2 years searching for solutions. Every healer, mage, scholar on the continent has tried and failed. You're not my last hope because I'm desperate, Vireya. You're my last hope because you're the only one who's ever survived this corruption and came out stronger. I was a child when I got sick. I barely remember it. Your body remembers. Your blood remembers." He glanced at her. "Trust that." Easier said than done, but she nodded anyway. They reached the capital as twilight fell. Ashenvale's city rose from the landscape like a fortress. Massive walls, watchtowers, gates thick enough to withstand siege engines. But even from a distance, Vireya could see the corruption's touch. Sections of the outer wall had crumbled. Buildings slumped like wounded soldiers. The whole city had a gray, exhausted quality. Guards opened the gates at Draven's approach. The streets beyond were quieter than any capital should be. Fewer people, less noise. As they rode through, citizens stopped to stare. At Draven, returning after weeks away. At the armed escort. At Vireya, with her mark on display and her foreign features. Whispers followed them like ghosts. "Who is she?" "Exiled. Look at her forehead. He brought an exile to be queen? The corruption has driven him mad." Vireya kept her spine straight, eyes forward. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. They approached the palace, a sprawling structure built from dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Draven dismounted in the courtyard and offered Vireya his hand. She took it. "Let him help her down." "Welcome home," he said quietly. A woman appeared in the palace doorway, tall, with auburn hair and an elaborate braid, wearing robes that marked her as high nobility. Her gaze swept over Vireya with surgical precision. "Your Majesty," she said. Her voice was silk over steel. "You return victorious, I see." "Lady Maren." Draven didn't release Vireya's hand. "May I present Vireya Solon, soon to be Queen of Ashenvale." Maren's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How unexpected. An exile, and from Solendra no less." She descended the steps. "The court will be fascinated to meet her." "I'm sure they will," Draven's tone held warning. "See that her chambers are prepared. She'll need everything suitable for her new position." "Of course, Your Majesty." Maren inclined her head, but her eyes, cold and calculating, never left Vireya's face. "I live to serve." She swept back into the palace. "Let me guess," Vireya said. "She wanted to be queen." "She thinks she already is, in everything but title." Draven finally released her hand. "Maren runs the court. She's brilliant, ruthless, and has been angling for a crown since she came of age. She will see you as a threat." "Should I be worried?" Yes. He started toward the entrance. But Marin operates within the rules. She won't poison your food or arrange an accident. She'll undermine you politically, turn the court against you, and make your life systematically miserable until you either conform or leave. Sounds delightful. Welcome to court politics. He paused at the doorway. Tomorrow I'll present you formally. Tonight, rest. Eat. Let the healers tend to that wound on your forehead properly. Draven. He looked back. Thank you, Vireya said, for coming to find me, for offering me this choice. Something shifted in his expression, softened. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen what you're up against. He nodded to a servant waiting nearby. Elira will show you to your chambers. If you need anything, ask. Then he was gone, striding into the palace depths with his commander at his heels. The servant, Elira, young with kind eyes, curtsied. This way, my lady. Vireya followed her inside. The palace interior was beautiful in a harsh way. Dark wood, stone walls hung with tapestries depicting battles and conquered kingdoms. Every decoration spoke of strength, power, dominance. But underneath that martial elegance, Vireya saw signs of the corruption. Cracks in the walls, tapestries moth-eaten despite obvious care. Even the air tasted faintly stale. Elira led her up a winding staircase to the third floor, pushed open a heavy door. Your chambers, my lady. The room beyond was larger than Vireya's entire apartment in Solendra had been. Four-poster bed, sitting area with a fireplace already crackling with warmth, windows overlooking the city, a bathing chamber visible through an archway. I'll have food sent up, Elira said, and the healers will arrive shortly to see to your mark. Thank you. Vireya moved to the window. Below, the city sprawled into darkness. Lights flickered, fewer than there should be, a dying kingdom, and somehow she was supposed to save it. The door closed softly as Elira left. Vireya touched the mark on her forehead. In the window's reflection, it looked like a lightning strike frozen on her skin. You're not worthless, she told herself. Theron was wrong. They were all wrong. She had to believe that, because tomorrow she'd face a court that already hated her, a kingdom that expected miracles. A role she had no idea how to fill. But she'd survived exile, survived the borderlands, survived being thrown away like garbage. She could survive this too. She had to. Outside in the darkness, something howled, long and mournful, the corruption calling. Vireya pressed her palm against the cold glass and made herself a promise. She would either save Ashenvale or die trying. There was no middle ground anymore, no going back, only forward, into whatever came next. The healers arrived an hour after Elira left. 3 of them, led by an elderly woman whose hands shook slightly as she set down her medical kit. They examined Vireya's forehead mark in silence, their expressions carefully neutral. It's infected, the old healer finally said. Whoever carved this was deliberately cruel about it. Counselor Dren. Vireya remembered the way he'd pressed the blade deeper than necessary, the satisfaction in his eyes. Can you fix it? She asked. We can clean it, treat the infection. The scar will remain. The healer began unpacking supplies, salves, clean bandages, a bottle of something that smelled astringent. This will hurt. It did. The cleaning solution burned like liquid fire. Vireya gripped the chair, arms hard enough to leave nail marks in the wood, but she didn't make a sound. When they finished, the lead healer stepped back. You should rest. The fever from the infection will break by morning if you... She stopped, stared at Vireya's forehead. What? Vireya touched the bandage. It's already healing. The healer's voice held disbelief. The inflammation is down. The tissue is knitting together. That should take days, not minutes. The other healers leaned in, examining her with renewed interest. Remarkable, one whispered. I've never seen... Leave her. Marin's voice cut through the room like a whip. She stood in the doorway, still in her elaborate robes. His Majesty wants her rested, not poked at like a specimen. The healers packed their supplies quickly and filed out, casting backward glances at Vireya. Marin closed the door behind them, turned to face Vireya with an expression that could freeze wine. So, she said, the prophesied savior.
How convenient that you arrived exactly when we needed you. Vireya stood. I didn't ask to be here. No, you were exiled, thrown away like refuse. Marin circled her slowly, predatory. Tell me, what makes an exile think she can be queen? That she can save a kingdom when her own people deemed her worthless? I don't think anything. Draven made an offer. I accepted. Draven. Marin's smile was sharp. How familiar.
You've known him 3 days and already you're on first-name terms? He told me to call him that. I'm sure he did. She stopped in front of Vireya. Let me explain how things work here. This court has standards. Bloodlines matter. Strength matters. You, an exiled foreigner with a criminal's brand on your face, you think you can just walk in and claim a crown? I'm not claiming anything. I'm here to help if I can. Help? Marin laughed without humor. The corruption has been spreading for 2 years. We've consulted with every healer, mage, and scholar on the continent. What makes you think you can succeed where they all failed? Vireya met her gaze steadily. I survived it. So you say. But survival doesn't equal cure. And even if you do possess some ability, Marin's eyes narrowed. That doesn't make you fit to rule. Queens need political acumen, diplomatic skill, the ability to navigate court intrigue without getting destroyed. Then it's lucky I am not trying to rule alone. Ah, yes. The partnership. Marin's tone dripped sarcasm. How romantic. Except Draven needs a queen who can actually lead, not a charity case he rescued from freezing to death. The words hit their target. Vireya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Careful, she said quietly. You're very good at tearing people down. Is that your only skill? Something flickered in Marin's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. I run this court, she said. I keep the nobility in line. I manage the kingdom's resources. I've held Ashenvale together while Draven was off fighting wars, and now he brings home an exile and expects everyone to bow and accept it? She stepped closer. The court will eat you alive, and I won't lift a finger to stop them. I wouldn't expect you to. Good. Marin moved toward the door, paused with her hand on the handle. One more thing. Draven may see you as some prophesied savior, but prophecies are stories people tell themselves when they're desperate. Don't mistake his hope for actual belief in you. She left without waiting for a response. Vireya stood alone in the too large room, her hands trembling with anger and something else. Fear, maybe. Or the creeping suspicion that Marin was right. Food arrived shortly after. Roasted meat, bread that actually tasted fresh, vegetables she didn't recognize. She ate mechanically, barely tasting it. Through the window, the city sprawled beneath a moonless sky. Somewhere out there, that little boy was dying, and his mother was putting her faith in a woman who might be nothing more than a desperate king's last mistake. Vireya touched her forehead. The bandage felt strange, foreign, but underneath it, the mark was already healing faster than it should, just like the healer said. Something in her blood was different, had always been different. The question was whether that difference would be enough. Morning came with a knock that rattled the door hinges. Vireya woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. Then memory crashed back. Ashenvale, the palace, Draven's impossible offer. Enter, she called. Elira bustled in with an armful of fabric. Good morning, my lady. His Majesty requests your presence in the throne room in 2 hours. I'm to help you dress appropriately. Appropriately for what? Your formal presentation to the court. Elira laid out the clothes. A gown in deep emerald green, far finer than anything Vireya had owned even in Solendra. All the nobles will be there. It's tradition when a new queen is chosen. Vireya's stomach twisted. I'm not queen yet. You will be. His Majesty has already made the announcement. Elira began unlacing Vireya's nightgown. Now come. We need to make you presentable. Lady Marin sent over cosmetics to help cover the mark. No. Vireya caught Elira's hand. I'm not hiding it. My lady, it's customary to... I said no. She pulled away. If they're going to judge me, they can judge me as I am. Mark and all. Elira looked worried, but nodded. As you wish. Getting dressed took longer than Vireya expected. The gown had complicated fastenings.
Her hair, which she'd kept short and practical in Solendra, needed to be styled in a way that wouldn't immediately mark her as foreign. Alira worked magic with combs and pins, creating something elegant but severe. When she finally stepped back, Vireya barely recognized her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged in a palace, regal, composed, until you saw the mark bisecting her forehead, raised, red, impossible to ignore. "You look beautiful," Alira said softly. "I look like an exile trying to play dress-up." "You look like a queen." Alira met her eyes in the mirror. "And for what it's worth, half the palace is already talking about you. About how His Majesty rode into the borderlands alone to find you. How he wouldn't leave until he succeeded. They probably think he's lost his mind. Some do." Alira adjusted the gown's collar. "But others are hopeful. We're desperate, my lady. People are dying. If there's even a chance you can help." She trailed off. Vireya turned to face her. "What if I can't? What if I try and fail?" "Then at least you tried. That's more than most would do." Alira smiled. "Now come. We can't keep them waiting." The walk to the throne room felt endless. Servants and guards stopped to stare as Vireya passed. Some bowed. Others just looked shocked. Commander Revik met them outside the massive double doors. His expression was unreadable. "Ready?" he asked. "No." "Good answer." He pushed open the doors. "Honesty will serve you better than false confidence here." The throne room was packed. Nobles in their finest clothes lined both sides of the central aisle. Warriors in ceremonial armor, advisors, courtiers. Every important person in Ashenvale gathered to witness the exile who thought she could be queen. At the far end, Draven sat on a throne carved from black stone. He wore dark formal robes that made him look even more imposing than usual. His expression was carefully neutral. Maren stood to his right, her smile predatory. Revik offered Vireya his arm. "Walk straight. Head up. Don't show fear." She took his arm and started forward. The whispers began immediately. "That's her? She's wearing the mark uncovered. Shameless. From Solendra, I heard. Thinks she can save us when her own kingdom threw her away." Vireya kept her spine straight, eyes forward. Each step echoed in the vast space. Halfway down the aisle, a nobleman stepped deliberately into her path. "Lord Castor," Revik said, warning in his tone. The nobleman, middle-aged, with a face like weathered granite, ignored him, his gaze fixed on Vireya. "Is it true?" he demanded. "You're an exile, marked for deficiency?" The room went silent. Vireya met his eyes. "Yes." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "And you think," Castor continued, "that you're worthy to be our queen, to rule over noble bloodlines that have held power for centuries?" "I think," Vireya said carefully, "that I'm here because your king asked me to help save a dying kingdom. Whether I'm worthy is for him to decide, not you. His Majesty is desperate, grief-stricken over his dying people. He's not thinking clearly." "Lord Castor," Draven's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood from his throne. "You will show respect, or you will leave." Castor's jaw tightened. "Your Majesty, I speak for many when I say this is madness. An exile, a foreigner. She could be a spy sent by Solendra to—" "Enough!" Draven descended the steps, moved to stand beside Vireya. "Vireya Solin is here at my invitation. She will be presented as my intended queen. If you have objections, take them up with me privately. Not here, not now." The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. Castor looked like he wanted to argue further, but survival instinct won. He stepped aside. Draven offered Vireya his hand. She took it, and together they approached the throne. The formalities were mercifully brief. Draven announced his intention to make her queen, asked if anyone had legitimate legal objections, which technically no one did since Ashenvale's laws didn't prohibit marriage to exiles. But the hostility in the room was thick enough to choke on. When the ceremony ended, Draven dismissed most of the court, kept only his inner council, Revik, Maren, and 3 other advisors whose names Vireya struggled to remember. "Speak freely," Draven said once they were alone. "I know you all have concerns." "Concerns?" Maren's laugh was brittle.
Your Majesty, you've brought an exiled foreigner and announced she'll be our queen. The nobility is ready to riot. Let them try. Draven, one of the advisors, an older man named Kellen, leaned forward. We understand your desperation. We're desperate too, but this woman is untested, unknown. How can we trust her with our kingdom's future? The same way you trust me, Draven said, by giving her a chance to prove herself. And if she fails? Meryn asked. If children keep dying while we wait for a miracle that never comes? Draven's expression hardened. Then we'll deal with that if it happens. But I'm not giving up on this. Perhaps, Revik said carefully, Lady Vireya could demonstrate her abilities if she truly can heal as the prophecy suggests. She's not a performing animal, Draven snapped. It's fine. Vireya spoke for the first time since entering. All eyes turned to her. They want proof. I understand that. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She looked at Draven. They need to see that I'm not just empty promises. And honestly, so do I. Silence fell. The boy, Vireya said. The one we saw on the road. The woman with the sick child. Take me to him. Meryn's eyebrows rose. Now? Why wait? Vireya turned to face the council. You want proof? I'll try to give it. But I need to warn you, I don't fully understand how this works. I've only healed once before, and it was instinct more than skill. I might fail. At least you're honest about it, Kellen said. Prepare a carriage, Draven ordered Revik, and send word ahead that we're coming. I want healers standing by in case... He trailed off. In case she made things worse. He didn't say it, but everyone heard it anyway. The village was 40 minutes from the capital. They traveled in a carriage surrounded by armed guards, not for protection from bandits, but because Draven refused to let Vireya travel alone. Meryn insisted on coming too, along with 3 of the court's best healers. The woman's house looked even more ramshackle in daylight. The roof sagged, shutters hung crooked. A small garden plot sat withered and dead from the corruption. The woman, her name was Lyra, Vireya learned, met them at the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Your Majesty, she whispered, dropping into a clumsy curtsy. He's worse. Since yesterday, he's barely breathing. This is Vireya, Draven said gently. She's going to try to help. Lyra's gaze found the mark on Vireya's forehead. Something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe, or despair. But she stepped aside and let them enter. The house's interior was dark and smelled of sickness. The boy lay on a pallet near the fireplace, covered in thin blankets. His breathing rattled in his chest. Vireya knelt beside him. Up close, the corruption was even more obvious. Those gray-green veins had spread across most of his visible skin. His lips had a bluish tint. How long has he been like this? One of the healers asked. 4 days. Lyra hovered nearby, wringing her hands. He stopped eating yesterday. Stopped drinking this morning. The healer exchanged a grim look with his colleagues. Vireya understood the message. The boy was dying. Hours, maybe. Not days. Everyone out, Vireya said. What? Meryn stepped forward. We came to witness... I can't focus with an audience. Vireya didn't look away from the child. Please, just give me space. Draven touched Meryn's arm. Come on. But that's an order. His voice was soft but absolute. They filed out. Lyra went last, casting one desperate backward glance. The door closed. Vireya was alone with the dying child. She pressed her palms against his forehead. His skin burned with fever that had nothing to do with heat, the corruption's signature. Okay, she whispered. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to try to help. I need you to fight too. Can you do that? The boy didn't respond. His eyes stayed closed. Vireya took a deep breath and closed her own eyes. Last time, with the vendor's daughter in Solendra, she'd acted on pure instinct. She'd wanted so desperately for the child to live that something inside her had responded. Now she tried to find that same feeling, that same desperate wish. Please, she thought, whatever I have inside me, whatever makes me different, I need it now. This child needs it. Nothing happened. Panic flickered. What if it didn't work? What if that first time had been a fluke? No, she pushed the fear down. Focus. She thought about her own childhood illness, remembered the fever dreams, the way her body had felt like it was tearing itself apart from the inside. She'd survived because something in her blood had fought back, adapted, learned to coexist with what should have killed her. She pressed her hands harder against the boy's forehead. Fight, she willed. Whatever's trying to kill you, fight it. You're stronger than this. Her palms began to warm. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the warmth grew, spread up her arms, pooled in her chest. Something stirred deep inside her, ancient, powerful, familiar, and utterly alien at the same time. The boy gasped. Vireya's eyes snapped open. Light poured from her hands, not metaphorical, actual light, silver white and bright enough to cast shadows. It flowed into the child like liquid starlight, following those corrupted veins. The gray-green tint began to recede. Vireya felt something shift. Her consciousness split. Half of her still kneeling in the small house, half of her diving deep into the boy's body. She could see the corruption now, feel it, a living thing, parasitic and hungry. It tried to spread further, tried to consume the healing light. No, she thought fiercely, you don't get him. The light intensified, the corruption recoiled, and Vireya understood suddenly what she had to do. She couldn't just push the corruption out. She had to transform it, break it down at its most basic level and rebuild the tissue clean. The process was instinctive. Her body knew what to do even if her mind didn't fully comprehend it. But it hurt. Pain lanced through her like she was being torn apart. The corruption fought back, trying to spread into her instead. She felt it probing, searching for weakness. It found the scars on her spine, those marks from her childhood infection. Recognized something there. Survivor, it seemed to whisper. You carry us already. The realization hit like cold water. Her childhood illness hadn't just scarred her, it had changed her, left something behind that let her understand the corruption on a fundamental level. She was infected, had been since she was 6 years old, but her body had learned to live with it, turned it into something else, something that didn't kill. And now she could teach this boy's body to do the same. The light pulsed, shifted. Instead of fighting the corruption directly, Vireya guided it, showed the boy's immune system how to adapt, how to transform the infection into something harmless. The gray-green veins faded. Color returned to the child's lips. His breathing eased. Vireya felt something inside her body break. The light flickered, dimmed. She pushed harder, pouring everything she had into the healing. Just a little more. Almost there. The last traces of visible corruption vanished. The boy's eyes fluttered open. Mama? He whispered. Vireya's hands fell away. The light winked out. The room spun. She tried to stand and collapsed instead, her legs refusing to support her weight. The door burst open. Draven rushed in, followed by Lyra and the healers. What happened? Maren demanded. We saw light. He's awake, one of the healers breathed. The corruption is gone. Lyra fell to her knees beside her son, sobbing. The child sat up weakly, confused but clearly recovering. Draven crouched beside Vireya. Are you hurt? Tired, she managed. It takes a lot. Can you stand? Give me a minute. The healers were examining the boy with growing amazement. Impossible, one kept muttering. The progression was too advanced. He should be dead. But he's not. Maren stared at Vireya with an expression that might have been respect or fear. She actually did it. Draven helped Vireya to her feet. She swayed and he caught her. Easy, he murmured. I've got you. Did it work? Vireya asked. Really work. See for yourself. Lyra was holding her son, both of them crying. The boy looked weak but undeniably alive, pink skin, clear eyes, normal. Thank you, Lyra whispered. Thank you, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Vireya's voice came out rough. I don't know if it's permanent. I don't know if I can do that again. You saved him. Lyra's gaze held fierce gratitude. Whatever happens next, you gave me my son back. That's everything. Outside, villagers had gathered. Word must have spread. They pressed against the windows, trying to see. We need to leave, Revik said quietly, before this becomes a mob scene. He was right. Already people were calling out, begging for help with their own sick relatives. Draven guided Vireya toward the carriage. Marin and the guards formed a protective barrier. "Please," someone shouted.
"My daughter is dying. My husband. Just look at my son, please." Vireya's heart cracked. So many. Too many. "I'll come back," she called out. "I promise. Just let me rest first." Whether they believed her or not, she didn't know, but Revik and the guards managed to clear a path. They climbed into the carriage. As soon as the door closed, Vireya slumped against the seat. "That was extraordinary," Marin said. Her usual hostility had been replaced by something else.
"Calculation, maybe. Do you understand what you just did? Proved I'm not completely useless? You proved the prophecy is real." Marin leaned forward. "Or at least that you have abilities no one else possesses. The court will have no choice but to accept you now. Some of them will still hate me. Of course, but hate is easier to manage than doubt." Marin sat back. "This changes everything." Draven said nothing, just kept his hand on Vireya's shoulder, steady and warm. The carriage rolled back toward the capital. Through the window, Vireya saw more villages, more houses marked with white cloth, the symbol of corruption sickness inside. So many, dozens, maybe hundreds. Could she heal them all? Should she even try? The healing had nearly destroyed her. She could still feel the echoes of pain in her bones, and she'd only saved one child. "What are you thinking?" Draven asked quietly. "That I'm not enough," Vireya admitted. "Even if I healed someone every day, it wouldn't be fast enough. The corruption is spreading faster than I can stop it. Then we find another way." His voice held certainty. "You've proven it can be beaten. That's the first step. And the second? We figure out what's causing it in the first place." He glanced at Marin. "Assemble the council. Tonight. I want every report on the corruption's origins, every theory, every scrap of information we've gathered." "Your Majesty," Marin said carefully, "there are hundreds of reports, years of research. Then we'll read all night if we have to." He looked at Vireya. "You said the corruption felt alive, intelligent, like it was probing you." She nodded. "Then it's not a plague, it's an attack." His expression hardened. "Someone or something is doing this deliberately, and we're going to find out who." The carriage crossed back through the Capitol gates. Citizens lined the streets. News had spread impossibly fast. They stared at Vireya with a mixture of hope and hunger that made her skin crawl. "They're going to expect miracles now," she said. "Let them." Draven's hand squeezed her shoulder. "You just proved miracles are possible. That's more than this kingdom has had in 2 years." Vireya wanted to believe him, wanted to think that saving one child was enough to change things. But as the palace loomed ahead, she felt the weight of all those desperate eyes, all those dying people. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that the hard part was just beginning. The council meeting lasted until dawn. They gathered in Draven's war room, a circular chamber lined with maps and reports. Vireya sat beside the king, fighting exhaustion while advisors presented their findings. Most of it was information she already knew. The corruption started 2 years ago in the southern provinces. It spread north steadily, following no logical pattern. Attempts to quarantine failed. Attempts to burn infected areas failed. Even destroying entire villages did nothing. The corruption simply appeared elsewhere. "It's like it's searching for something," Kellen said, pointing to a map marked with red pins showing infection sites. "See how it moves? Almost methodically. Or someone is directing it," Marin added, "moving it toward specific targets." "Who would benefit from destroying Ashenvale?" Revik asked. "Everyone." Draven's voice was grim. "We've conquered half the continent. We have enemies in every direction." "But this level of devastation?" Kellen shook his head. "This isn't military strategy. This is annihilation. Whoever's doing this doesn't want to conquer Ashenvale. They want to erase it." Vireya studied the map. The infection pattern did look deliberate, but there was something else, something the advisors weren't seeing. "The concentration points," she said. Everyone turned to look at her. "Here and here." She pointed to several locations where the red pins clustered thickest. "These aren't random. They're all near—" She stopped, frowned. "What are these symbols?" "Old temples," Marin said, "abandoned for decades. Followers of the ancient faith used to worship there before the kingdom converted." "Ancient faith?" Vireya looked at Draven. "You didn't mention that." "Because it's irrelevant. Those temples have been empty for 50 years. Most are ruins, but the corruption is strongest around them. Vireya traced the pattern with her finger. What if it's not irrelevant? What if whatever's causing this is connected to the old religion? Silence fell. That's actually possible, Kellen said slowly. The ancient faith practiced rituals involving blood and earth. They believed the land itself was alive, conscious. Superstition, Marin said. Maybe. Vireya met her eyes. Or maybe they knew something we don't. I felt the corruption when I was healing that boy. It wasn't just a disease. It was aware. It tried to infect me. Are you saying the land is attacking us? Revik sounded skeptical. I'm saying we should investigate those temples, see if there's a connection. Draven stood, moved to the map. Which one is closest to the capital? The Temple of Eternal Roots, Marin said, Chateau, about 3 hours north. But Your Majesty, it's been searched already, multiple times. There's nothing there. Then we'll search again. He looked at Vireya. Can you travel? She was exhausted. Her whole body ached from the healing, but the pattern on that map was too clear to ignore. Yes, she said. Then we leave at first light. Draven began issuing orders. Revik, assemble a team. Marin, I want every record we have on the ancient temples compiled and ready to travel. Kellan, Your Majesty. Marin's voice cut through the room. Perhaps Lady Vireya should rest. She's barely recovered from— I'm fine, Vireya interrupted. You collapsed after one healing. And I'll collapse again if I have to, but sitting in the palace while people die isn't an option. She stood, meeting Marin's gaze. I came here to help. Let me help. Marin looked at Draven. Your Majesty, this is reckless. It's necessary. He moved to stand beside Vireya, a united front. We finally have a lead. We're following it. The look Marin gave Vireya was complex, respect and resentment tangled together. As you command, she said finally. The council dispersed. Draven walked Vireya back to her chambers. You should sleep, he said. At least a few hours. Will you? No? Then why should I? He smiled faintly. Fair point. They reached her door. What you did today, healing that boy, it was remarkable. It was terrifying, Vireya admitted. I had no idea if it would work. And Draven, she hesitated. I can't do that for everyone. There are too many people sick. It takes too much out of me. I know. So what happens when they realize I'm not the miracle cure they're hoping for? When children keep dying because I can't save them all? Then we find the source and stop it at the root. His expression was fierce. You're not responsible for healing every individual victim. You're the key to understanding how to end this entirely. You have a lot of faith in me. You've earned it. He reached out, touched her hand briefly. Get some rest. Tomorrow might be difficult. He left. Vireya entered her chambers and collapsed on the bed, fully clothed. Sleep claimed her immediately. She dreamed of silver light and corrupted veins, of a voice whispering from deep underground, Survivor. Sister. Come find us. She woke to Alara shaking her shoulder. My lady, it's time. Outside, dawn was breaking. Red sky like blood. Vireya dressed quickly in practical travel clothes, braided her hair back, checked that the mark on her forehead was healing cleanly. It was already fading to a pale scar. Draven waited in the courtyard with 20 armed riders. Revik handed her a horse. Can you ride? He asked. Yes. She'd learned in Solendra, though it had been months since she'd been in a saddle. She mounted. The horse, a gray mare with patient eyes, shifted beneath her but didn't bolt. Marin arrived last, looking irritated at being dragged from the palace at dawn. Are we ready? Draven asked. Revik nodded. They rode out as the sun climbed. The Temple of Eternal Roots sat on a hill overlooking a dead forest. The structure was ancient, stone columns carved with symbols Vireya didn't recognize. Most of the roof had collapsed. Vines, brown and withered from corruption, covered everything. Cheerful, Vireya muttered. Draven dismounted. Fan out. Search everything. If you find anything unusual, report immediately. The soldiers spread through the ruins. Vireya walked slowly through what had been the main chamber. Broken statues lay scattered. Ancient offerings, now just dust and rot. She felt something pull at her, a strange tugging sensation low in her chest. "Draven," she called. He appeared at her side. "What is it?" "I don't know, but something here." She moved toward the back of the temple. The pulling sensation grew stronger. Behind the altar, she found stairs leading down. "There's a lower level," she said. Revik joined them, torch in hand. "The reports didn't mention this." "Because it's been sealed," Draven pointed to rubble blocking the stairway. "Recently, by the look of it." "Someone doesn't want us down there," Vireya said. Draven's smile was sharp. "Then that's exactly where we're going." He ordered his men to clear the rubble. It took an hour of hard work, but finally the stairs were passable. Revik went first with the torch. Draven followed. Vireya came third. The stairs descended into darkness. At the bottom, they found a chamber. And in that chamber, someone was waiting. A figure in dark robes stood beside an altar carved from black stone. On that altar lay a child, another victim of the corruption, near death. The robed figure turned. Vireya's blood ran cold. She knew that face. "Counselor Dren," Draven breathed. "The old man from Solendra's court. The one who'd carved the mark into Vireya's forehead. The one who'd smiled while doing it." "Your Majesty," Dren said pleasantly. "How nice of you to visit, though I'm afraid you're just in time to witness the feeding." He pressed his hand against the dying child's chest. The boy screamed, and the corruption poured into him like a flood, consuming him from the inside. Vireya moved without thinking. She lunged forward, silver light already blazing from her palms as she reached for the dying child. But Dren was faster. He yanked the boy off the altar and held him like a shield, one hand pressed against the child's chest, where corruption visibly churned beneath the skin. "Ah, Dren said. "One step closer, and I accelerate the process. He'll be dead before you can blink." Draven's sword whispered from its sheath. Behind them, Revik and two other guards moved to flank the chamber's exits. "You're a long way from Solendra, Counselor," Draven said. His voice was calm, but Vireya saw the fury in his eyes. "Want to explain what you're doing in my kingdom?" "Your kingdom?" Dren laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "This land belonged to the old powers long before your ancestors built their pathetic dynasty. I'm simply returning it to its rightful owners." The boy in his arms convulsed. Blood trickled from his nose. "Let him go," Vireya said. "Whatever you want, whatever this is about, he's just a child." "A vessel." Dren's grip tightened. "They all are. The corruption needs anchors in the living world. Young bodies work best. Their life force is stronger, burns longer." "You sick bastard!" Revik raised his crossbow. "Release him, now!" "Or what? You'll shoot me and the boy dies anyway?" Dren's smile was reptilian. "I don't think so, Commander." Vireya's mind raced. The corruption was killing the child, but not instantly. Dren was controlling it somehow, feeding it in measured doses. If she could get close enough. "How long have you been doing this?" Draven asked. Buying time, Vireya realized, letting his soldiers get into position. 2 years, since your predecessor refused to acknowledge the ancient claims. Dren's eyes glittered with fanatical light. King Aldrich thought he could build a new world on the bones of the old faith, thought destroying the temples would erase our power. He was wrong. "Aldrich died of fever," Draven said. "Aldrich died screaming as the corruption ate him from the inside." Dren's voice dripped satisfaction. "Just like this child will. Just like all of them will, until your kingdom is nothing but ash and memory." The boy's breathing grew more labored. His skin was almost entirely gray-green now. Vireya calculated the distance. 10 feet. She could cover it in seconds if she moved fast enough. But if Dren killed the child before she reached him... "The prophecy," she said suddenly. "You knew about it. That's why you marked me. Why you convinced Theron to exile me." Dren's attention snapped to her. "Clever girl. Yes, I knew. The ancient text spoke of a survivor who could undo our work, someone whose blood carried immunity. I couldn't risk you interfering. So you destroyed my life to protect your genocide." "I removed an obstacle." He shrugged. "Nothing personal? Though I admit, I enjoyed carving that mark into your face. You always were too arrogant for an alpha with defective bloodlines." Rage burned through Vireya's veins, her hands clenched, light flickering between her fingers. There it is, Dren breathed. The power. I can see it now. You really are the one from the prophecy. He tilted his head. Unfortunate. I'd hoped distance would keep you away long enough for the corruption to finish its work. Why are you doing this? Draven demanded. What do you gain from murdering innocents? Rebirth. Dren's expression turned rapturous. The old powers promised us a new age, a world where those who serve them will ascend beyond mortal limitations. Your kingdom, all the kingdoms, will fall, and from the ashes, true believers will build something greater. You're insane, Revik said. I'm enlightened. Dren pressed harder against the boy's chest. The child's eyes rolled back. And you're out of time. Vireya didn't wait for permission. She threw herself forward, silver light exploding from her entire body. Dren jerked back, but not fast enough. Vireya's hand connected with the child's forehead just as Revik's crossbow bolt punched through Dren's shoulder. The old man screamed, stumbled, lost his grip on the boy. Vireya caught the child as he fell, hit the ground hard, her back slamming against stone, but she kept her hands on his face, poured light into him desperately. The corruption fought back. It was so much worse than before. Actively malicious, deliberately trying to kill. She felt it clawing through the boy's body, racing toward his heart. No, not this one. You don't get this one. She pushed harder. The light intensified until the entire chamber blazed like captured lightning. Draven and his men were shouting, fighting, but Vireya couldn't focus on anything except the battle happening inside this dying child's body. The corruption was different this time, stronger. It had been deliberately cultivated, weaponized, and underneath it she felt something else, something vast and ancient and hungry. The presence from her dreams, the voice that had whispered sister. It spoke again now, resonating through the corruption like a bell. You cannot stop us, little survivor. We are the land itself. We are eternal. You're a disease, Vireya threw back, and I've already survived you once. She remembered her childhood infection, remembered the fever, the pain, the way death had circled her bed for months. But she'd lived, her body had adapted. Now she used that memory as a weapon, showed the boy's immune system how to fight, how to transform the corruption into something harmless. The ancient presence recoiled, surprised. Impossible. You should not, cannot. Watch me. Vireya felt something tear inside her own body, a barrier breaking, power flooding through channels that had been closed her entire life. The light changed, shifted from silver to something brighter, pure. The corruption screamed, an actual sound, high-pitched and agonized, and began to dissolve. The boy gasped. Color returned to his skin in a wave. Vireya's hands fell away. The light died. She lay on the cold stone floor, every muscle shaking, her vision blurred. Vireya. Draven's face appeared above her. Can you hear me? The boy, she managed. Is he alive, breathing normally? Draven lifted her carefully. What about you? Tired. So tired. We need to move. Revik appeared, blood on his sword. More of them are coming. More? Vireya tried to sit up, failed. Dren wasn't alone. Draven carried her toward the stairs. He had followers hidden in the temple, at least a dozen. They emerged into the main chamber just as robed figures converged from all sides. Old men and women, their eyes filled with the same fanatical light Dren had shown. Heretics! One of them shrieked. You dare defile this holy place! Form up! Revik shouted. The guards surrounded Draven and Vireya in a protective circle. Swords drawn, ready. The cultists attacked without warning. No negotiation, no mercy. They fought like people who'd abandoned sanity long ago, throwing themselves at the guards with knives and clubs, screaming prayers to powers that had been dead for centuries. Or maybe not so dead after all. Because as they fell, Vireya saw corruption seeping from their wounds, pooling on the temple floor, moving with purpose. It's spreading, one of the guards yelled. The blood! It's alive! The corrupted blood flowed toward them like seeking fingers. Where it touched stone, the rock began to rot. Outside, Draven commanded. Everyone out! Now! They fought their way through the cultists and burst into daylight. Behind them, the temple groaned. Corruption spread through its ancient structure like wildfire,
dissolving stone that had stood for centuries.
The building collapsed inward with a sound like the world breaking. Dust and debris exploded outward. Draven shielded Vireya with his body as chunks of stone rained down. When the dust settled, the Temple of Eternal Roots was gone. Nothing remained but rubble and a spreading pool of corrupted matter that smoked in the morning sun. "Mount up," Rivik ordered, "before that corruption reaches the horses." The survivors scrambled into their saddles. Draven lifted Vireya onto his horse and climbed up behind her, one arm locked around her waist. They rode hard, putting distance between themselves and the ruins. A mile out, Draven finally slowed. "Let the horses breathe." Vireya sat slumped against him, barely conscious. Everything hurt. Her bones felt like they'd been hollowed out and filled with sand. "How many did we lose?" Draven asked. "3," Revik reported grimly. "Jenkins, Marlowe, and Kestrel. The corruption got them before they could retreat." Draven's jaw tightened. "When we return, make sure their families are provided for." "Yes, Your Majesty." They rode in silence for a while. Then Vireya stirred. "Dren," she said. "Did he—" "Dead." Draven's voice was flat. "Took a crossbow bolt through the heart when he tried to stop us from leaving. His body's still in the rubble." "Good." Vireya shouldn't feel relief at anyone's death, but she did. The man had destroyed her life, tried to kill children, and served powers that wanted to erase entire kingdoms. The world was better without him. "The boy?" she asked. "Alive. We got him to the horses. He's riding with Revik." Relief flooded through her. At least one child saved, at least one life preserved. But the cost? "What Dren said," Vireya continued, "about the old powers, about rebirth. Did you know about any of that?" "No." Draven's arm tightened around her. "The ancient faith was eradicated 50 years ago, or so we thought. Clearly, some believers survived, went underground. And they've been planning this for decades." Vireya's head throbbed. "Waiting for the right moment to unleash the corruption, which means there are more of them. Dren was just one cell." Draven's voice turned grim. "They could be anywhere, in any kingdom." "In your court," Vireya said quietly. He didn't argue. They both knew she was right. Someone had to be feeding information to the cultists. Someone inside the palace with access to royal movements and plans. A traitor. They reached the capital as night fell. Word of the temple's destruction had somehow preceded them. Citizens lined the streets, watching with fearful eyes as the riders passed. Merrin met them in the palace courtyard, her face pale. "Your Majesty, thank the—" She stopped, seeing the exhausted soldiers, the empty saddles. "What happened?" "Prepare the council chamber," Draven said, dismounting. "Emergency session. Everyone who holds rank in this palace. I don't care if they're sleeping or eating or dying. I want them there in 1 hour." "Your Majesty?" "Now, Merrin." She fled. Draven helped Vireya down. Her legs buckled, and he caught her. "I can walk," she protested. "I know, but you don't have to." He carried her inside despite her protests. Servants scattered as he strode through the corridors. He took her to her chambers, deposited her gently on the bed. "Rest," he ordered, "just for an hour. Then I need you at that council meeting." "Why? I'm not—" "You're the only one who understands what we're fighting." He crouched beside the bed, meeting her eyes. "Dren was right about one thing. You are the one from the prophecy, the only person who can actually stop this. I can heal individual victims. That's not the same as stopping the source." "Then we find the source together." His voice was fierce. "But first, we root out whoever's working with the cultists inside this palace. Because I will not have traitors undermining our efforts." Vireya wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't ready for political intrigue on top of everything else. But he was right. If they couldn't trust the court, they'd never win this fight. 1 hour, she agreed. He left. Vireya lay back on the bed, every muscle screaming. She should sleep, should let her body recover. Instead, she kept seeing that ancient presence, kept hearing its voice in her mind. "You cannot stop us. We are eternal." What if it was right? What if the corruption couldn't be stopped, only slowed? No, she refused to believe that. There had to be a way. Had to be something she was missing. She closed her eyes and reached inward, examining the power that had awakened during the healing. It felt different now, stronger, more controlled. When she'd healed the first child, the vendor's daughter in Solendra, the light had been instinctive, uncontrolled. Today, it had been focused, deliberate. She was learning, adapting, just like her body had adapted to the childhood infection. The thought sparked something, a connection she hadn't made before. Her childhood illness had changed her on a fundamental level, left her with immunity and the ability to heal others. But what if it had done more than that? What if she wasn't just immune to the corruption? What if she was connected to it? Part of the same system? The ancient presence had called her sister, not enemy, not threat, sister. Vireya's eyes snapped open. She sat up too fast, head spinning. But the idea was there, crystallizing with terrifying clarity. She wasn't just a weapon against the corruption. She was part of it, or had been, once. Her body had integrated the infection so completely that it became part of her, which meant... A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Elira came in with fresh clothes and worried eyes. "My lady, are you well enough for the council meeting?" "I have to be." Vireya stood on shaky legs. "Help me dress. Something formal. If I'm going to accuse nobles of treason, I should look the part." Elira paled. "Treason?" "Just help me dress." 20 minutes later, Vireya entered the council chamber wearing a gown of midnight blue. Her hair was pinned up, exposing the mark on her forehead, still healing, but visible. Let them see it. Let them remember she'd survived what they feared. The chamber was packed. Every noble, every advisor, every person of rank in the palace had assembled as ordered. They stood in tense clusters, whispering urgently. Conversations died as Vireya appeared. Draven stood at the head of the table, still in his travel-stained clothes. He hadn't bothered changing, wanted them to see he'd been fighting while they sat comfortable. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I'll keep this brief. We've discovered the source of the corruption." Gasps rippled through the room. "It's not a plague. It's an attack. A deliberate campaign by cultists of the ancient faith who've been working to destroy Ashenvale from within." Draven's gaze swept the assembly. Councillor Dren of Solendra was one of them. He died this morning while trying to sacrifice a child to accelerate the corruption's spread. The whispers exploded into full conversation, nobles shouting questions, advisors demanding proof. Draven raised a hand. Silence fell. "Here's what concerns me more," he continued. "The cultists knew where to find the temples, knew when the palace would be vulnerable. Someone has been feeding them information." He paused. "Someone in this room." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Your Majesty," Lord Castor said carefully, "that's a serious accusation." "I know, which is why I'm giving the traitor one chance." Draven's voice hardened. "Confess now. Tell us everything, and I'll show mercy. Your life will be spared." No one moved. "No?" Draven smiled without humor. "Fine. Then we do this the hard way." He nodded to Revik. The guards closed the chamber doors, locked them. "No one leaves until we have answers," Draven said. "We'll question every person here if necessary, search every room, examine every correspondence. The traitor will be found." "This is outrageous," a noblewoman protested. "You can't imprison us like criminals. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want." Draven's eyes were chips of ice. "Especially when my kingdom is under attack and one of you is helping the enemy." Meryn stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps a more measured approach?" "Measured hasn't worked. People are still dying." He turned to Vireya. "Tell them what you saw in the temple." All eyes shifted to her. Vireya's mouth went dry. Public speaking had never been her strength, but she forced herself to meet their gazes. "Councillor Dren was channeling corruption into a child," she said. Her voice came out steady despite her nerves. "Using the boy as an anchor to spread the infection. He said young bodies work best because their life force burns longer." Horror washed across several faces. Others looked skeptical. "He was insane," someone muttered. "He was organized," Vireya countered. "He had followers, resources, information about royal movements. None of that happens without support from inside the palace." "Or," Lord Castor said slowly, This could all be an elaborate deception. You show up from nowhere, claim miraculous powers, and suddenly we're hunting traitors based on your word? Based on what we saw with our own eyes, Draven snapped. What you saw. Conveniently, the only witnesses are you, your men, and her. Castor gestured at Vireya. For all we know, this entire story is fabricated to justify consolidating power. Are you calling me a liar? Draven's hand moved to his sword. I'm saying we need more than stories. Castor didn't back down. You want to accuse someone of treason? Show us proof. The room erupted again, nobles choosing sides, voices rising. Vireya felt the situation spiraling out of control. In minutes, this would devolve into chaos, maybe even violence. She had to do something. But what? Then she felt it. That tugging sensation in her chest. The same pull she'd experienced at the temple. The corruption was here, in this room. Her eyes swept the assembly, searching. Most of the nobles looked normal. Angry, scared, confused, but normal. But one, Lady Saris, an older woman who managed the palace's food supplies. She stood near the back, face carefully neutral. And underneath her collar, Vireya saw it, a faint gray-green tint crawling up her neck. You, Vireya said, pointing. Everyone turned. Saris's expression didn't change. Me what? You're infected. Vireya started forward. The corruption is in you. Ridiculous. Show them your neck. Saris's hand flew to her collar. I don't have to prove anything to an exile. Guards, Draven ordered. 2 soldiers moved to flank Saris. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. This is insane, she protested. I'm not infected. I'm not... Revik grabbed her arm, pulled down her collar. The gray-green veins were unmistakable. They spread from her collarbone toward her jaw, pulsing faintly. The room went silent. How long? Draven asked quietly. Saris's facade cracked. She laughed, a broken, desperate sound. 6 months, since they approached me with an offer. What offer? Power. Immortality. A place in the new world they're building. Her eyes glazed with fanatical light. The old ways are returning. Your kingdoms will fall. The land itself will consume you. Who approached you? Draven demanded. Give me names. Names won't help you. Saris smiled. It was Dren's smile. Wrong and reptilian. We're everywhere. In every court, every kingdom. You can't stop what's coming. Watch me. Draven drew his sword. Wait. Vireya stepped between them. She's infected. If you kill her, the corruption will spread. Then what do you suggest? Vireya looked at Saris, at the corruption visibly advancing through her body. The woman was dying, had been dying for months probably, sacrificing herself for a cause she believed in. I can try to heal her, Vireya said. Extract the corruption before it kills her. Maybe then she'll talk. And if she doesn't, then at least we tried. Draven considered this, nodded. Do it. The guards forced Saris to her knees. She struggled, but the corruption had weakened her, made her fragile. Vireya knelt in front of her, placed her hands on the woman's face. Don't, Saris hissed. Don't you dare! The light blazed. Vireya dove into the infection. It was worse than the children's, older, deeper, more integrated. Saris had been living with this for months. It had woven itself through every organ, every system, and underneath it, Vireya felt that ancient presence again. Sister, it whispered, why do you fight us? You are one of us. You always have been. I'm nothing like you. Liar. You carry our essence in your blood. You survived because you accepted us. Became us. The words struck like physical blows, because they were partly true. Her childhood infection had changed her, made her something between human and whatever the corruption was, but that didn't mean she had to serve it. I survived because I'm stronger than you, Vireya threw back, and I'll keep being stronger. She pushed harder. The light intensified. The corruption fought back viciously. It didn't want to leave Saris, didn't want to lose its anchor. Vireya felt her own body beginning to break under the strain. Blood trickled from her nose. Her vision blurred. You will destroy yourself, the presence warned. Burn out your light trying to save those who hate you. Maybe,
But I'll take you with me. She tore the corruption out by the roots. Ceres screamed, a sound of pure agony that echoed through the chamber. The gray-green veins receded, color returned to her skin. But the corruption had been in her too long. When Vireya finally pulled away, Ceres collapsed. She was clean, free of infection. But her body had been so dependent on the corruption's energy that without it, she simply stopped. Vireya pressed her fingers to Ceres's throat. No pulse. I'm sorry, she whispered. Draven crouched beside her. You did what you could. I killed her. The corruption killed her. You just finished what it started. He stood, addressing the assembly. Let this be a lesson. The corruption doesn't grant power. It consumes you from the inside until there's nothing left. The nobles stared at Ceres's body in horrified silence. Search her quarters, Draven ordered. Find out who else she was in contact with. I want names, locations, everything. Revik moved to obey. Vireya stood on shaking legs. The room swayed. That's twice today, Draven said quietly. You need to rest. I need to understand what I am. The words came out before she could stop them. Draven's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? The corruption recognizes me, calls me sister. It says I'm one of them because I survived the childhood infection. She met his gaze. What if it's right? What if healing people isn't enough? What if I need to… She stopped. The idea forming was too dangerous, too insane. What? Draven pressed. What if the only way to stop the corruption is to go to its source, find whatever ancient power is controlling it, and… She swallowed hard. And absorb it, the way my body absorbed the childhood infection. Silence fell. That's suicide, Revik said flatly. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way. Vireya looked around the chamber, at the frightened nobles, the angry advisors, the kingdom tearing itself apart. We can't keep playing defense, can't keep healing individual victims while the source keeps spreading. We need to end this. By sacrificing yourself? Draven's voice was hard. Absolutely not. It might not be a sacrifice. My body adapted once, it might adapt again. Or it might kill you. Then it kills me. Vireya's frustration boiled over. But at least I tried. At least I did something instead of watching children die while we hunt for traitors and argue about prophecies. The outburst shocked everyone into silence. Vireya pressed her hands against her face. She was so tired, so done with all of this. We'll discuss this later, Draven said firmly. In private, right now. The ground shook, not subtly. A violent tremor that knocked people off their feet and sent books cascading from shelves. Earthquake, someone shouted. No. Vireya felt it through the soles of her feet, through her bones. It's waking up. What's waking up? The tremor intensified. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Somewhere in the palace, glass shattered, and Vireya heard it. That ancient voice, no longer whispering, roaring. Enough! The word reverberated through her skull, through the entire building. You have interfered for the last time, little sister. Now you will see what we truly are. The floor beneath Vireya's feet turned soft. She looked down. Corruption was seeping up through the stone itself, pouring into the chamber like toxic water. Everyone out, Draven commanded. Now! The nobles stampeded toward the doors. Revik and his guards tried to maintain order, but panic had taken over. Vireya stood frozen, watching the corruption spread. It moved with purpose, intelligence, searching for her. Come to us, the voice commanded. Come home, sister, accept what you are. Vireya, Draven grabbed her arm. We need to move. It wants me. She pulled away from his grip. If I run, it'll chase me. Kill everyone in its path. So what, you're just going to stand here? No. Vireya's decision crystallized with sudden, terrible clarity. I'm going to give it what it wants. She called the light. It blazed from her body in a column of silver white that punched through the ceiling. Every window in the chamber exploded outward. The corruption recoiled. You dare! The ancient presence snarled. You dare! Come and get me, Vireya said. The corruption surged forward like a tidal wave, and Vireya, instead of running, instead of fighting,
opened herself to it, let it pour into her body. Vireya, no! Draven's scream seemed to come from very far away. The corruption flooded her system, 1,000 times worse than the childhood infection, 1,000,000 times more vicious. It tried to consume her, tried to dissolve her from the inside. But Vireya's body remembered how to fight this, had spent 18 years learning how to coexist with the impossible. She didn't resist the corruption. She absorbed it, transformed it, made it hers. The light changed, shifted from silver to something else, something that had never existed before. A fusion of healing and corruption, life and death, human and ancient power. The presence in the corruption screamed, "What are you doing?" "Becoming what I was always meant to be," Vireya answered. Her body lifted off the ground. Light and corruption swirled around her in a maelstrom that tore at the very fabric of reality. She could see everything now, feel everything, every infected person in the kingdom, every corrupted piece of land, every cultist serving the ancient power. And beneath it all, deep underground, in caverns that predated human civilization, she felt the source, the sleeping god the cultists served. The entity that had sent the corruption as its fingers, reaching up from the depths to reclaim a world it once ruled. It was vast, terrible, ancient beyond comprehension. And Vireya realized with perfect, horrifying clarity, she couldn't defeat it, but she could become its prison. "Draven," she said. Her voice echoed strangely, layered with harmonics that shouldn't exist. "Get everyone out of the capital, as far away as possible." "What are you, Ahi?" "I'm going to the source, and when I get there..." She met his eyes, saw her reflection in them, barely human anymore, more light than flesh. "I don't know what will happen, but it's going to be big. You'll die." "Maybe," she smiled. It felt wrong on her transformed face. "Or maybe I'll become something else entirely. Either way, I can't let this thing keep killing children." "Vireya!" But she was already rising, already letting the connection to the source pull her down. Down through stone and earth, down to where the ancient god waited. The last thing she saw before the palace disappeared above her was Draven's face. Terrified, furious, helpless. Then darkness swallowed everything. And Vireya fell toward the monster beneath the kingdom. The descent lasted forever and no time at all. Vireya fell through layers of earth that parted before her like water. Stone became shadow, became something older than either. Her physical body was gone, or maybe transformed into pure energy. She couldn't tell anymore where she ended and the light began. The corruption guided her downward, not attacking now, almost welcoming. "Sister," it whispered, "finally you come home." She should be terrified, should be fighting this. Instead, she felt oddly calm, like she'd been heading toward this moment her entire life and just hadn't known it. The darkness opened into a vast cavern. No, not a cavern. A cathedral carved from living rock millions of years before humans existed. Columns of crystallized corruption stretched from floor to ceiling, pulsing with sickly light. The walls breathed. The ground had a heartbeat, and at the center, coiled in layers upon itself like a sleeping serpent, the god. It was impossible to comprehend. Vireya's mind kept sliding off its form, unable to process what she was seeing. Part mineral, part organism, part something that predated the concept of life itself. Tendrils of corruption spread from its body in all directions, reaching up through the earth to infect the world above. "Welcome," it said. The voice was the same one from her dreams, ancient, vast, patient. "I have waited so long for you." Vireya's light form hovered before it. She should attack, should try to destroy it while she had the chance. But she could see now that was impossible. This thing was older than mountains, had survived the formation of continents. Weapons couldn't hurt it. Magic couldn't bind it. It simply was. "Why?" she asked. Her voice echoed strangely in the cathedral cavern. "Why destroy the world above? Why kill children?" "Destroy." The god's amusement rippled through the space. "I do not destroy. I reclaim. This land was mine before your kind crawled from the mud. I was here when the first stones cooled. I will be here when the last star dies. That doesn't give you the right to murder innocents." "Murder?" The tendrils shifted, almost like a shrug. When you harvest grain, do you consider it murder? When you build cities on bones of ancient forests? Your people take without asking. I simply do the same. We're not grain. We're alive, conscious. We feel pain, as do I. The god's voice hardened. I felt pain when your ancestors built their temples on my flesh. When they drove iron stakes into sacred earth. When they forgot the old ways and pretended I did not exist. A tendril reached toward Vireya. So yes, little sister, I reclaim what is mine. And those who die in the process are simply the cost. Vireya looked at the tendril. It was the same gray-green as the corruption that had nearly killed so many. That had killed Ceres and countless others. But up close, she could see it was more complex than she'd thought. Not just disease, not just death. It was transformation, breaking down one form of life to build another. The cultists, she said, they think you're offering them immortality. I am. The tendril brushed against her light form. Where it touched, she felt ancient knowledge flooding through her. They serve me, and when their flesh fails, I preserve their essence. They become part of me, part of something eternal. That's not immortality, that's consumption. What is the difference? The god's voice held genuine curiosity. You fear becoming part of something greater than yourself. Why? Vireya didn't have an answer, or rather, she had too many answers, because part of her, the part that carried the childhood infection, understood the appeal. To never die. To become part of something vast and powerful. To transcend the limitations of a single fragile body. But another part, the part that remembered Lyra's tears, the boy's fevered breathing, Draven's desperate hope, recoiled. Because we're individuals, she said finally, we matter as ourselves, not as components of something else. Spoken like a child who has never experienced true connection. The tendril withdrew slightly. But you are different. You already carry me within you. Have carried me since you were 6 years old. I survived you. That's different from carrying you. Is it? The god's presence pressed closer. Look within yourself, sister. See what you truly are. Against her will, Vireya turned her awareness inward and saw. The childhood infection hadn't just scarred her. It had integrated into her DNA, rewritten portions of her genetic code. The reason her alpha power manifested strangely, flickering instead of constant, was because it was competing with something else, something ancient, powerful, not entirely human. She'd been part of the corruption for 18 years and never known it. No, she whispered. Yes. The god's satisfaction radiated through the cavern. You are my daughter as much as theirs, born of two worlds, and now you have come home to accept your true nature. The corruption in Vireya's blood responded, surged, tried to take control. For a moment she felt herself slipping, felt the temptation to just let go. Stop fighting, accept what the god offered. Then she remembered Draven's face when he'd found her dying in the borderlands. The choice he'd offered, not to be saved, but to save others. Remembered the little boy's eyes opening, his mother's desperate gratitude. Remembered standing in that council chamber, marked and exiled and worthless, and refusing to hide. She'd survived not by accepting what others said she was, but by choosing what she wanted to become. You're right, Vireya said. I am your daughter. I carry your essence in my blood. Finally you understand. But I'm also human. I'm also myself, and I choose which part defines me. The god went still. You wanted me to come here, Vireya continued, her voice growing stronger. Wanted me to accept your nature, become your vessel in the world above. Yes, that's not going to happen. She gathered her light, feeling it respond to her will in ways it never had before. Because I've figured out what I actually am, what my childhood infection made me. The corruption tendrils began to retract. The god's presence sharpened, alert now, wary. I'm not your servant, Vireya said, and I'm not your enemy. I'm your counterbalance. She released the light in a wave that filled the entire cavern. But it wasn't an attack. It was a mirror, showing the god what it had accidentally created when it infected a 6-year-old girl and that girl's body had refused to die. A being who could understand corruption and healing equally, who could transform one into the other, who could teach bodies to adapt instead of succumb. The god had tried to kill her. Instead, It had created the one thing that could stop it. Impossible, the god breathed. You keep saying that. Vireya's light form expanded. You don't understand humans very well, do you? We're good at surviving impossible things. The tendrils lashed out, no longer welcoming, attacking now, trying to consume her before she could become a real threat. Vireya didn't fight back. Instead, she did what she'd done with the dying children, what her body had learned to do 18 years ago. She absorbed the corruption, transformed it, turned it into something new. The god screamed. Its tendrils withered where they touched her. The gray-green shifted to silver. The death energy converted to life force. Stop, it roared. You cannot watch me. Vireya spread her awareness through the tendril network, followed the connections upward through the earth, found every infected person, every corrupted piece of land, every point where the god's influence touched the world above, and began healing them all at once. The strain was enormous. Her consciousness stretched across miles, touching thousands of infection points simultaneously. Each one required her to guide, transform, teach. She felt her sense of self fragmenting, spreading too thin. You will destroy yourself, the god warned. No mortal mind can hold this much. You will shatter. Maybe. Probably. But Vireya had spent her entire life being told she was broken, being marked as defective, being thrown away as worthless. She'd survived all of it. She could survive this too. She pushed harder. The silver light raced through the corruption network like fire through dry grass. Everywhere it touched, the transformation began. Children woke from fever dreams. Land began to heal. The gray-green tint faded from 1,000 bodies. And the god, ancient, powerful, eternal, began to shrink. Please, it whispered. The arrogance was gone now. Just fear remained. I am all that remains of the old world. If you do this, you erase millions of years. You destroy. I'm not destroying you, Vireya said. I'm changing you, the way you changed me. She reached deeper into the god's essence, found the core of what it was. Not evil, not deliberately malicious, just old, lonely, desperate to maintain relevance in a world that had moved on without it. The cultists who served it weren't being manipulated. They were serving something that genuinely didn't understand why humans valued individual lives over collective immortality. It was alien, incomprehensible, but not irredeemable. You can't exist in the world above, Vireya said. Not like this. You'll always try to consume. It's your nature. Then you will kill me. No, I'm going to give you a choice. She compressed her light form until she was standing, or whatever passed for standing, in this space between energy and matter, directly before the god's core. You can stay here, sealed beneath the earth, contained, alone forever. That is death. Or, Vireya continued, you can let me absorb you. Become part of me the way I became part of you 18 years ago. You won't control me, but you'll exist, experience the world through my senses, live without consuming. The god was silent for a long moment. Why would you offer this? Because I know what it's like to be thrown away, called worthless, exiled from everything you knew. Vireya's voice softened. And because anger just perpetuates the cycle, someone has to choose differently. You would forgive me? For the children I killed? I don't know if I can forgive that. Vireya's honesty felt important. But I can choose not to let it define what happens next. I can choose transformation over destruction. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, slowly, the god's presence began to change. The defensive aggression faded. The tendrils stopped attacking. You are strange, little sister. I get that a lot. If I agree, I will lose myself. Become part of your consciousness. Maybe, or maybe you'll become something new. Neither God nor human. Something in between. Like you. Like me. The god considered this. Then, with what felt like resignation and relief in equal measure, very well. I accept. The transformation began immediately. The god's essence flowed into Vireya like a river finding the sea. Vast, ancient, overwhelming. Her consciousness expanded to accommodate it, stretched beyond anything she'd thought possible. For a moment she was everywhere. Was everyone. was the land itself. She felt Draven evacuating the capital, his terror for her safety warring with his duty to his people. Felt Meryn organizing the retreat with ruthless efficiency, her fear buried beneath layers of competence. Felt every infected person in the kingdom as the corruption transformed, their bodies learning to adapt as hers had. Felt the earth beginning to heal, seeds sprouting in corrupted soil, water running clear again. The gods' memories flooded through her, millions of years. The formation of mountains, the rise and fall of species she had no names for. It was too much. Her human mind couldn't process it all. Something had to give. And in that moment of crisis, Vireya made a choice that surprised even herself. She let go. Let go of the anger at Theron for exiling her. Let go of the shame from the mark. Let go of the need to prove she wasn't defective. Let go of every wound, every scar, every pain that had ever defined her. Because she realized, suddenly, completely, that she didn't need them anymore. Those scars had helped her survive, had made her strong enough to reach this moment. But holding on to them now would only limit what she could become. So she released them. All of them. And in the space they left behind, the god's essence settled, found a home, integrated without consuming. The silver light exploded outward in a wave that shook the entire kingdom. Draven felt it from the evacuation point 3 miles outside the capital. The ground stopped shaking. The corrupted stench that had hung over everything for 2 years suddenly vanished, and a pulse of pure, clean energy washed across the land like a breaking wave. "What was that?" Revik demanded. Draven didn't answer. He was already running back toward the city, ignoring Revik's shouts to wait. He reached the palace to find it still standing, damaged, cracks in the walls, shattered windows, the council chamber floor still buckled, but standing. And in the center of that ruined chamber, where Vireya had disappeared into the earth, she was there, lying on the broken stone, breathing, alive. Draven skidded to his knees beside her. "Vireya, Vireya, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. They were different. Still her eyes, but with something else layered underneath, an ancient depth that hadn't been there before. "Draven," she said. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "Did it work?" "Did what work? What did you do?" She sat up slowly, looked at her hands like she was seeing them for the first time. "I made peace with a god," she said. "And it's inside me now, part of me, but not controlling me. You absorbed it." Draven's mind reeled. "The source of the corruption. You just took it into yourself." It was lonely and scared, and didn't understand why humans fought so hard against becoming part of something eternal. She met his gaze. "I showed it another way, and it chose transformation over annihilation." Footsteps echoed. Meryn appeared in the doorway, followed by a dozen guards. "Your Majesty, the city—" She stopped, stared at Vireya. "You're alive." "Disappointed?" Vireya asked. "Shocked." Meryn's usual composure was shaken. "The corruption is gone. All of it. Healers are reporting that infected patients are recovering. The land is healing." She looked at Vireya with something that might have been respect. "What did you do?" "Became what I was always meant to be." Vireya stood and Draven rose with her. The corruption wasn't just disease, it was a living thing, ancient and lonely and desperate to maintain relevance. I didn't destroy it. I integrated it. "You what?" "It's hard to explain." Vireya pressed a hand to her chest. "But I can feel it now. The old power. It's part of me, and I can use it to heal instead of harm." Revik pushed past Meryn. "The citizens are returning to the city. They want to see you, both of you." Draven looked at Vireya. "Are you ready for that?" She touched the mark on her forehead. It was still there, would always be there. But it looked different now, less like a brand of shame and more like a badge of survival. "Yes," she said. "I think I am." They walked through the palace together. The damage was extensive but not catastrophic. And everywhere Vireya looked, she saw signs of healing. Cracks in the walls knitting together, dead plants beginning to sprout new growth. The land was responding to the transformation, recognizing that the ancient power was no longer trying to destroy it. Outside, thousands had gathered, Citizens who'd fled during the evacuation, nobles who'd witnessed her disappearance, soldiers who'd fought the cultists. They fell silent as Vireya and Draven appeared. She could feel their fear, their confusion, their desperate hope. People of Ashenvale, Draven's voice carried across the courtyard. The corruption is ended. The threat is neutralized. You have Vireya to thank for that. The crowd didn't cheer. Not yet. They were still processing. Then a small figure pushed through the masses. The boy. The first one Vireya had healed. He ran up to her without hesitation and threw his arms around her waist. "Thank you," he said. His voice was clear, strong. "Mama said you saved me. Twice." Vireya knelt to his level. "You saved yourself too. You fought hard. Are you really going to be our queen?" She glanced at Draven. He nodded slightly. "Yes," she said. "If you'll have me." The boy grinned. "Mama says anyone who fights monsters is okay in her book." He ran back to his mother, Lyra, standing at the edge of the crowd with tears streaming down her face. And then, slowly, the crowd began to react. Not with cheers, not with celebration, but with something quieter, more profound. They knelt. One by one, starting with Lyra and spreading outward like ripples, the citizens of Ashenvale knelt before the exile who had saved them. Even the nobles. Even Lord Castor, who challenged her right to be there. Even Marin, after a long moment of internal struggle. Vireya felt tears burning in her eyes. She'd spent so long being told she was worthless, being marked as defective, being thrown away. And now an entire kingdom was acknowledging that she mattered. "Rise," Draven said. "All of you. This woman is not a deity to be worshipped. She's a person who made an impossible choice, who risked everything to save people she barely knew." He turned to Vireya, extended his hand. "She's going to be our queen, and together we're going to rebuild, make this kingdom into something better than it was." Vireya took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. The crowd rose with them, and this time they did cheer. The sound rolled across the courtyard, gaining strength, until it felt like the entire city was celebrating. But Vireya barely heard it. She was focused on the connection she could feel now, to the land, to the people, to the ancient power that had become part of her. She could sense every healed infection, every recovering patient, every piece of land beginning to thrive again. The god's presence stirred inside her, not controlling, just observing. "This is what you chose," it said. "Individual lives. Temporary connections. It is so fragile." "That's what makes it beautiful," Vireya answered silently. "Nothing lasts forever. So we make the time we have matter." The god considered this. Then, "Perhaps you are wiser than I credited, or maybe just more stubborn." Something that might have been laughter rippled through her consciousness. The celebration continued, people dancing, singing, releasing years of fear in a collective exhale. Draven leaned close. "How do you feel?" "Different." Vireya watched the crowd. "Like I'm more than I was, but also more myself than I've ever been." "That makes no sense." "I know." She smiled. "But it's true anyway." Marin approached, her expression carefully neutral. "Your Majesty, Lady Vireya, the Council wishes to meet. There are questions about what happens next." "Let them wait," Draven said. "Tonight we celebrate. Tomorrow we plan." "Your Majesty." "That's an order, Marin." For once, she didn't argue, just nodded and withdrew. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Vireya watched the light play across the damaged buildings, the celebrating people, the kingdom she'd somehow saved. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the exile, the borderlands, Draven's impossible offer. Every terrible thing that had happened had led to this moment, and she realized she wouldn't change any of it, because the pain had made her who she was. The scars had given her strength. The mark had become a symbol of survival instead of shame. "Vireya," Draven's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "There's something I need to tell you." She turned to him. "When you disappeared into the earth," he said quietly, "when I thought you might die, I realized something." "What?" "This started as a political arrangement, a desperate king making a deal with an exile. But it's become more than that." He took her hand.
You've become more than that. Vireya's heart stuttered. Draven, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I want you to know, you're not just a tool to save my kingdom. You're not just a prophesied savior. His gray eyes held hers. You're someone I admire, respect. Someone I want beside me, not because you're useful, but because you're you. She didn't know what to say. Her emotions were too tangled, gratitude and affection and uncertainty all mixed together. I don't know if I can be what you need, she admitted. I'm still figuring out what I am. Then we'll figure it out together. He squeezed her hand. No pressure, no obligations, just possibility. Possibility. Vireya had spent so long focused on survival that she'd forgotten to think about what came after. But standing here hand in hand with a king who saw her as an equal, surrounded by people who'd accepted her despite the mark, she could see it. A future. Not perfect, not without challenges, but hers to shape. Okay, she said. Let's see what's possible. Draven smiled. The real smile, not the guarded one he showed the court. And in that moment, Vireya felt something shift inside her. Not the god's power, not the healing light, just her own heart cracking open after years of protecting itself. Maybe she could do this. Not just survive, but actually live. The celebration continued long into the night. Vireya eventually retreated to her chambers, exhausted but unable to sleep. She stood at her window looking out over the healing city. The god stirred inside her. What will you do now? Help rebuild. Learn to control this power. Figure out how to be a queen. And the pain, the scars. You released them all. I did. Do you regret it? Vireya considered. The mark on her forehead would remain. The memories of exile, of being thrown away, would never truly disappear. But the rage, the shame, the desperate need to prove her worth, those were gone. And without them, she felt lighter, freer. No, she answered. I don't regret it. Then you are truly free. Maybe. Or maybe freedom was something she'd have to keep choosing, over and over. But for the first time in her life, she believed it was possible. A knock sounded at her door. Enter, she called. Elira came in with tea and a cautious smile. I thought you might want this, my lady. Thank you. Vireya took the cup. Elira, can I ask you something? Of course. When you first saw me, marked, exiled, broken, did you think I'd survive even a week? Elira was quiet for a moment, then, No, my lady, I didn't. What changed your mind? You did. Elira met her eyes. The way you refused to hide the mark. The way you healed that boy, even though it nearly killed you. The way you kept choosing to help instead of run. She smiled. You showed everyone, including me, that worth isn't something others give you. It's something you claim for yourself. Vireya felt tears prickling again. Thank you. For everything. After Elira left, Vireya returned to the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The court would have questions. Neighboring kingdoms would hear about what happened and have their own concerns. There would be politics, intrigue, power struggles. But tonight, she could just be. Not an exile, not a queen, not a prophesied savior. Just Vireya. Scarred and strange and stronger than anyone, including herself, had ever believed possible. She touched the mark one last time, then smiled and turned away from the window. There was work to do, a kingdom to heal, a future to build. And for the first time in her life, she was ready. The coronation was set for 3 weeks after the corruption fell. 3 weeks that passed in a blur of reconstruction, political maneuvering, and learning to live with an ancient god residing in her consciousness. Vireya spent her days in council meetings, her evenings walking through the healing city, her nights lying awake wondering if she was remotely qualified for any of this. You're overthinking, the god said one night. It had developed a dry sense of humor in the weeks since integration, a common human failing. I'm about to become queen of a kingdom that's still half destroyed. Overthinking seems appropriate. You defeated me. Ruling mortals should be simple by comparison. I didn't defeat you. We merged. Semantics. A pause. Are you afraid? Vireya considered. Terrified.
Good. Fear keeps you sharp. The god's presence withdrew slightly, giving her space.
It had learned to do that, to exist without overwhelming her. You will do well, sister. You have already proven yourself stronger than anyone expected. She wished she shared that confidence. The morning of the coronation arrived with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather. Illyra woke Vireya before dawn, bringing an elaborate gown of deep emerald and silver. His Majesty's choice, Illyra explained, helping Vireya into the layers of fabric. He said it should match your eyes. The gown was beautiful but heavy. The bodice had intricate embroidery depicting trees with silver roots, a symbol of the old and new worlds merging, appropriate given what Vireya had become. Your hair, my lady. Illyra began pinning it up in an elaborate style that left Vireya's forehead exposed. The mark was visible, just as she wanted. No hiding, not anymore. Are you nervous? Illyra asked. Beyond words. That makes sense. Every noble family on the continent will be there,
including representatives from Solendra. Vireya's hand stilled. What? His Majesty extended invitations to all neighboring kingdoms. A gesture of goodwill, he said, to show that Ashenvale's healing marks a new era of cooperation. Illyra's expression was carefully neutral. King Theron sent his regrets, but he did send a delegation. Of course he did. Couldn't miss the opportunity to witness his exiled former betrothed being crowned queen of his greatest rival. Who's in the delegation? Vireya asked. Lady Serana leads it, along with several counselors. Vireya's stomach twisted. Serana, Theron's current intended, the woman who'd stood beside him while he'd stripped Vireya of everything. When do they arrive? They're already here. Arrived last night. Perfect. Just perfect. Illyra finished with her hair and stepped back. You look like a queen, my lady. Vireya studied her reflection. The woman staring back was almost unrecognizable from the one who'd stumbled into Ashenvale 3 months ago. Stronger, more certain, but still carrying that mark like a warning. This is who I am, she thought. Broken and remade, exiled and crowned, all of it. The god stirred approvingly. Now you understand. The coronation was held in Ashenvale's Grand Cathedral, a massive structure that had somehow survived the corruption with minimal damage. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the assembled crowd in jewel tones. Vireya waited in an antechamber, her heart hammering. Through the door she could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices. Every noble in Ashenvale, representatives from a dozen kingdoms, merchants, scholars, even common citizens who'd earned the right to witness through service or sacrifice. The door opened. Draven stepped through. He wore formal robes of black and silver, a crown of dark metal resting on his brow. He looked every inch the conquering king, except for his eyes, which held genuine warmth when they landed on her. Ready? He asked. No. Good answer. He offered his arm. Neither was I, the first time. But you don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing. She took his arm. And if I fail? If I'm terrible at this? Then we'll fix it together. He squeezed her hand. You're not doing this alone, Vireya. That was the whole point of the partnership, remember? Right. Partnership. Not love, not romance. Partnership. Though the way he looked at her lately suggested the lines had blurred more than either of them had intended. The doors opened wide, trumpets sounded, the crowd rose as one. Vireya and Draven walked down the center aisle together. Every eye in the cathedral tracked their movement. She kept her spine straight, gaze forward, refusing to show the fear churning in her gut. Halfway down, she spotted the Solendra delegation. Serana stood among them, resplendent in silver and white. Her expression was carefully composed, but Vireya caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. Their gazes met for a brief moment. Serana inclined her head. Not a bow, that would be too much, but an acknowledgement. Vireya returned it and kept walking. At the altar, High Priest Aldrin waited. He was ancient, his face carved from wrinkles, but his voice carried clearly. We gather to witness the crowning of a new queen, he intoned. One who has proven herself through trial, sacrifice, and the defense of this kingdom against forces that sought to destroy it. The ceremony was traditional, oaths spoken, blessings given, symbolic gestures performed. But when Aldrin lifted the crown, a delicate circle of silver set with emeralds, he paused. Vireya Solin, he said, you come to us marked as one cast aside, an exile, deemed worthless by those who should have valued you most. The words echoed through the cathedral. Vireya felt every eye on her mark. But you have proven, Aldrin continued, that worth is not given by others. It is claimed through action, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice for those who cannot defend themselves. You are not queen because of your bloodline. You are queen because you have earned it. He placed the crown on her head. The weight was significant but not crushing. Vireya felt it settle against her skull, the cool metal pressing against the mark. Rise, Queen Vireya of Ashenvale, Aldrin declared. Protector of the realm, healer of the corrupted, bridge between old and new. The cathedral erupted in applause. Vireya stood, Draven beside her, and faced the assembly. All these people, nobles who'd doubted her, citizens who'd feared her, foreigners who'd come to judge her, they were applauding, actually applauding. She caught sight of Marin in the front row. The woman's expression was complicated, respect warring with old resentment. But she was clapping, slowly, deliberately. Lord Castor stood several rows back. He met Vireya's gaze and gave a single nod. Not friendship, but acceptance. And there, near the back, Lyra, holding her son, both of them beaming. The boy waved enthusiastically. Vireya's throat tightened. This was real. This was happening. She was queen. The ceremony concluded with a formal procession through the city. Vireya and Draven rode in an open carriage so the citizens could see them. People lined the streets, cheering, throwing flowers. Children ran alongside the carriage. Vendors hawked commemorative tokens. Someone had painted a massive banner reading, "The Marked Queen," and hung it across a major intersection. Vireya touched her forehead self-consciously. They're celebrating the mark? They're celebrating you, Draven said. The mark is part of your story. Why hide it? Because it was supposed to be shameful. A brand of deficiency. In Solendra, maybe. Here, it's become a symbol of survival. He gestured to the crowd. Look! Vireya looked and saw, scattered through the masses, people wearing painted lines on their foreheads, mimicking her mark. What are they doing? She whispered. Claiming their own scars, Draven said quietly. You showed them that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. They're following your example. Tears blurred Vireya's vision. She blinked them back, unwilling to cry in front of thousands. But the emotion was too big to contain. She'd spent her whole life being told the mark made her less than, and now people were wearing it as a badge of honor. The procession ended at the palace. A formal reception waited, hours of meeting dignitaries, accepting congratulations, navigating political small talk. Vireya was halfway through her third conversation with a minor noble when someone approached from her left. Your Majesty, Serana's voice was perfectly modulated, respectful but not servile. May I have a word? Vireya excused herself from the noble and turned to face Theron's intended. Up close, Serana was even more beautiful than she'd been in Solendra. Golden hair perfectly arranged, flawless skin, the kind of woman who fits seamlessly into royal courts, everything Vireya had never been. Lady Serana, Vireya said carefully, welcome to Ashenvale. Thank you. Serana's gaze swept over Vireya's crown, her gown, the mark. You've done well for yourself, considering. Considering I was exiled and left to die? Considering everyone wrote you off? Serana's expression was unreadable. Including me, I'll admit. When Theron told me you'd been sent to the borderlands, I assumed you'd be dead within days. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't disappoint. Serana paused. You terrified everyone. News of what you did, absorbing the corruption, transforming it, that reached Solendra 2 weeks ago. The council hasn't stopped arguing about the implications since. And Theron? Furious, mostly at himself. Serana's lips curved slightly. He exiled the one person who could have saved both kingdoms. Let his best asset slip through his fingers because he was too concerned with bloodline purity. There was something sharp in her tone, something bitter.
Are you still planning to marry him? Vireya asked. The betrothal stands, for now. Sarana's gaze sharpened. But watching you today, seeing what you've built from nothing, I'm reconsidering my options. Sarana, I'm not asking for advice, just acknowledging reality. She glanced across the room to where Draven stood speaking with advisors. You got the better king, the better kingdom, and you earned it through your own strength, not political maneuvering. She looked back at Vireya. I envy that. Before Vireya could respond, Sarana curtsied, a full, formal bow that acknowledged Vireya's superior rank, and withdrew into the crowd. Vireya stood frozen, processing the conversation. The gods stirred. That one is more dangerous than she appears. She's trapped in the same system that almost destroyed me, Vireya thought. She deserves pity, not suspicion. Pity and suspicion are not mutually exclusive. Fair point. The reception dragged on for hours. By the time Vireya finally escaped to her chambers, no longer the guest rooms, but the queen's suite, she was exhausted. She kicked off her formal shoes and collapsed on the bed, still wearing the crown. A knock sounded. If that's another dignitary, I'm officially dead, she called. Just me. Draven's voice. Come in. He entered, having shed his formal robes for simpler clothes. He'd removed his crown too, leaving his dark hair disheveled. Surviving? He asked. Barely. Vireya sat up. Is it always like that? The endless conversations about nothing? Welcome to royalty. It's 70% talking, 20% paperwork, and 10% actual decision-making. He sat in the chair by her window. But you handled it well. Several nobles commented on your composure. I was faking. Everyone's faking. That's the secret. He smiled. The real challenge starts tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? The Unity Council. Representatives from all the kingdoms you just met will gather to discuss forming a continental alliance. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, possibly a unified approach to preventing future corruptions. Vireya's stomach sank. That sounds complicated. Incredibly, and you'll be at the center of it. Draven leaned forward. They'll want access to your healing abilities. Want you to travel to their kingdoms, cure their sick, prove you're not a threat. I can't heal everyone. We've talked about this. I know, but they don't understand that yet. You'll have to establish boundaries. Decide what you're willing to offer and what you're not. Vireya rubbed her temples. I thought defeating an ancient god would be the hard part. That was the easy part. This, he gestured vaguely at the palace around them. This is where the real work begins. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Draven said quietly, You were magnificent today. At the coronation. The way you carried yourself. He stopped, started again. I know this isn't what you expected when you accepted my offer, but I'm glad you're here. Glad you stayed. Vireya met his eyes, saw genuine affection there, maybe even love, though neither of them had said the word. I'm glad too, she admitted, even with the endless conversations and political maneuvering. This is better than freezing to death in the borderlands. High praise. Don't let it go to your head, he laughed, then stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be long. Draven, he paused at the door. Thank you, Vireya said, for coming to find me, for giving me a choice, for seeing me as more than a tool or a prophecy. His expression softened. Thank you for proving me right. After he left, Vireya finally removed the crown and set it on her dresser. The weight lifted, but the responsibility remained. She was queen now, actually officially queen. The realization hit with unexpected force. She'd gone from exile to royalty in less than 4 months, from worthless to essential. The transformation should feel triumphant, vindicating. Instead, she just felt tired. The god stirred. You are disappointed. No, just overwhelmed. You expected victory to feel different, I guess. Vireya moved to the window. Below, the city sprawled into darkness. Lights flickered in windows, life continuing. I spent so long fighting to survive. Now that I have, I don't know what to do with it. Live, the god said simply. Is that not the point of survival? To claim the life that comes after? But what kind of life? I'm queen, but I don't feel like one. I have power, but I'm still figuring out how to use it.
I've defeated the corruption, but I don't know what comes next. Then discover it. The god's presence wrapped around her consciousness like a blanket. You spent 18 years surviving what should have killed you, spent months becoming what everyone said was impossible. The hard parts are done, sister. Now you get to choose what you become. Vireya considered that. Choose what she became, not who others said she should be, not what prophecies demanded, just who she wanted to be. The idea was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. She slept that night without dreams. The Unity Council convened the next morning in Ashenvale's war room. 12 kingdoms sent representatives. The room was packed with competing interests, old grudges, and barely concealed suspicion. Vireya sat beside Draven at the head of the table. Marin took notes. Revik stood guard at the door. "Thank you all for coming," Draven began. "We face an unprecedented opportunity. The corruption that threatened to destroy us has been neutralized, but the threat revealed weaknesses in how our kingdoms operate independently. I propose we establish formal alliances, share resources, create unified defenses against future threats." Immediate objections erupted. "Ashenvale wants to control us. This is a power grab. Why should we trust the kingdom that spent decades conquering its neighbors?" Draven let them argue for several minutes, then raised a hand. Silence fell. "I understand your concerns," he said. "Ashenvale has been aggressive in the past, but the corruption didn't care about borders or politics. It killed indiscriminately. If we don't work together, the next threat will destroy us all." "Easy for you to say," Lord Brennan of Velmarch snapped. "You have the healer, the prophesied savior. We have nothing." All eyes turned to Vireya. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it. But facing a room full of hostile, desperate nobles was different from theoretical planning. "I'm not a weapon you can deploy," she said carefully. "And I'm not a miracle worker who can cure every illness. What I did with the corruption was specific to my nature. I can't replicate it on demand." "But you can heal," Brennan pressed. "Our physicians report that any illness touched by the corruption responds to your power. My daughter is still sick. Others across the continent are suffering. You could help them." "I could try, but there are thousands of victims. I can't reach them all." "So you'll just let them die?" Another noble, whose name Vireya hadn't caught. "While you sit comfortable in your palace?" "That's not what I said." "Sounds like it to me. You defeated one god and now you're too important to help common people." Vireya felt anger flaring. She pushed it down. "I'm saying I'm one person with limited capacity. If I try to heal everyone individually, I'll burn out before reaching a fraction of them." "Then what do you propose?" Serana asked. She sat with the Solendra delegation, her expression thoughtful. Vireya took a breath. She'd discussed this with Draven last night. Now she had to sell it to hostile nobles. "I can't heal everyone personally," she said, "but I can teach. The healers in each kingdom, I can show them what I do, how to guide bodies to adapt instead of succumb. It won't be as effective as direct intervention, but it will help more people than I could ever reach alone." Silence fell. "You'd share your knowledge?" Brennan looked skeptical. "Just give it away?" "I'd teach it to people committed to using it ethically, healers, physicians, those who've taken oaths to help rather than harm." Vireya met his gaze. "But yes, I'd share it freely." "Why?" The question came from a representative of Keldrin. "What do you gain?" "Fewer dying children, fewer desperate parents, a world where the next corruption, if there is one, doesn't devastate us because we're better prepared." Vireya leaned forward. "I was exiled for being different, cast aside as worthless. I know what it feels like to be abandoned. I won't do that to others just because I have power now." The room was silent. Then Marin spoke up. "Her Majesty has already begun training Ashenvale's healers. We've seen significant improvements in recovery rates for corruption-touched patients. The methodology works." "And you're willing to extend this to other kingdoms?" Serana asked. "Even Solendra?" Vireya looked at her, saw the woman who'd stood beside Theron while he'd destroyed her life. "Even Solendra," she said. "The sick didn't exile me. They deserve help regardless of politics." Serana nodded slowly. "King Theron will be interested to hear that." The meeting continued for hours. Debates about trade routes, border disputes, military alliances. Vireya contributed where relevant, stayed silent when she had nothing to add. By the time they broke for lunch, her head was pounding. "You did well," Draven said quietly as they walked to the dining hall. "Offering to teach rather than heal directly. That was brilliant. Gives them what they need without burning you out."
Assuming they accept the offer.
"They will. Desperation makes people practical." He glanced at her. "How are you holding up?"
Tired, overwhelmed, wondering if I'm remotely qualified for any of this.
"Welcome to leadership." He squeezed her hand briefly. "It never gets easier. You just get better at faking confidence." The afternoon session was more productive. Several kingdoms tentatively agreed to the alliance framework. Others wanted time to consult their rulers. But progress was being made. As the sun set, Draven called for a recess. "We'll reconvene tomorrow. Tonight, a formal dinner to celebrate the potential alliance. More politics, more performance." Vireya excused herself to change clothes and collect her thoughts. She was halfway to her chambers when she heard shouting from a side corridor. "Don't care about protocols. I demand to see her." Vireya recognized that voice. Her stomach dropped. She turned the corner to find Rivik blocking a man's path. A man in Solendra's colors. A man she'd once loved. Theron. He looked older than she remembered, thinner. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he wasn't sleeping well. "Your Majesty," Revik's voice was carefully neutral. "King Theron arrived unannounced. I was explaining he needs to wait for proper reception." "It's fine," Vireya said. She gestured to a nearby sitting room. "We can talk. Alone." "Vireya," Rivik started. "It's fine," she repeated. "Give us 10 minutes." Rivik looked unhappy, but retreated. Vireya entered the sitting room. Theron followed, closing the door. They stood facing each other. The man who'd exiled her and the woman who'd become everything he'd thrown away. "You look well," Theron said finally, awkwardly. "You look terrible." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Fair assessment." Silence stretched. "Why are you here?" Vireya asked. "Serana is perfectly capable of representing Solendra." "I know, but I needed—" He stopped, started again. "I owe you an apology." Of all the things she'd expected, that wasn't one of them. "For what specifically?" Vireya kept her voice level. "Believing Dren's lies? Carving the mark into my forehead? Exiling me to die in the borderlands?" Theron flinched. "All of it. Everything." He moved to the window, unable to meet her gaze. "Dren convinced me you were a liability, that your deficiency would corrupt our bloodline, weaken the kingdom. I believed him because it was easier than fighting the council." "So you threw me away?" "Yes." He turned to face her, "and it's haunted me every day since. The news reached Solendra about what you'd done. How you'd saved Ashenvale, absorbed an ancient god, become exactly what the prophecy predicted." His voice cracked. "I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was a coward." Vireya should feel vindicated, triumphant. She'd been right, and he'd been catastrophically wrong. Instead, she just felt sad. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "Deeply. The exile, the mark, those I survived. But the betrayal? Knowing you didn't fight for me? That's what cut deepest." "I know." "And now you're here for what? Forgiveness? Absolution?" "No." Theron's laugh was hollow. "I don't deserve either. I just wanted you to know I was wrong and that I'm sorry." He paused. "And to ask if your offer to teach healers extends to Solendra, despite everything I did to you." There it was, the real reason for his visit. Vireya studied the man she'd once planned to marry, saw the guilt eating him alive, the regret. She could refuse, could make him suffer the way she'd suffered, but the god's words echoed in her mind. "Choose what you become." "It extends to Solendra," she said. "Send your best healers. I'll teach them what I know." Theron's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because sick people in Solendra didn't make the choice to exile me. They deserve help." "Still, thank you." He moved toward the door, paused. "For what it's worth, you're a better ruler than I ever was. Ashenvale is lucky to have you." "I know." He left. Vireya stood alone in the sitting room, processing the conversation. She'd faced the man who'd destroyed her life and chosen mercy over revenge. The old Vireya, the one who'd stumbled into Ashenvale broken and angry, wouldn't have been capable of that. But she wasn't that person anymore. The god stirred approvingly. You grow wise, sister. Or just tired of carrying grudges. Perhaps that is the same thing. The formal dinner that night was elaborate. Courses kept arriving, wine flowed freely. Toasts were made to the potential alliance, to Ashenvale's recovery, to Vireya specifically. She endured it with as much grace as she could muster. Afterward, she found herself on a balcony overlooking the city. Alone finally, the crown feeling heavy on her head. Draven joined her a few minutes later. Escaping? He asked. Breathing. She looked at him. Is it always this exhausting? The politics? Yes, but it gets easier to navigate. He leaned against the railing beside her. I heard Theron showed up. News travels fast. Always does in a palace. He was quiet for a moment. Are you all right? Surprisingly, yes. Vireya touched the mark on her forehead. He apologized. Actually seemed to mean it. And? And I let him. Forgave him, I guess. Or started to. She looked out at the city lights. Holding on to that anger wasn't serving me anymore. It was just making me bitter. Draven nodded slowly. You're stronger than most people, myself included. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm constantly improvising. That's what leadership is, making it up as you go and hoping it works out. He turned to face her fully. But you're not doing it alone. You have me, have Meryn, despite her reservations, have an entire kingdom that believes in you. They believe in a prophecy, a symbol. They believe in the woman who saved their children, who refused to hide her scars, who chose to teach rather than hoard her power. His voice was firm. That's not a symbol. That's you. Vireya wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was just improvising, just faking her way through. But looking at Draven's face, at the genuine respect and affection there, she realized he was right. She had changed, become someone stronger, not perfect, but capable, not unbreakable, but resilient. Thank you, she said softly, for seeing me. Not the prophecy or the power, just me. Always. He reached out, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. For what it's worth, I stopped seeing you as just a political arrangement weeks ago. Draven, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, but I want you to know you've become important to me, as a partner, as a queen, and as a person I care about deeply. Her heart hammered. I care about you too, but I'm still figuring out who I am now, what I want. Then take your time, figure it out. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled. We have a kingdom to run together. That's enough for now. He kissed her forehead, gentle, chaste, and left her alone on the balcony. Vireya touched the spot his lips had pressed, felt warmth spreading through her chest. Maybe she could have this. Not just survival, not just victory, but actual happiness. The thought was terrifying and wonderful. The Unity Council concluded 3 days later with a signed alliance between 8 kingdoms. Not universal acceptance, but a start. Vireya spent the following weeks traveling to each allied kingdom, teaching their healers her methods. It was exhausting work, demonstrating the healing process, explaining the theory behind adaptation, training people to recognize when intervention would help versus harm. But she saw results. Recovery rates improved, fewer deaths from corruption-touched illnesses, the knowledge spreading faster than she could have managed alone. In Solendra, she met with their healers in the same palace where she'd been exiled, walked the same corridors, saw the same faces that had watched her fall. But she walked as queen now, head high, mark visible, undeniably powerful. The difference was intoxicating. 6 months after the coronation, Vireya stood in the rebuilt council chamber, repairs finally complete, and looked at the map of the continent. Allied kingdoms were marked in green, neutral ones in yellow, hostile in red, more green than she'd expected. The alliance was holding. We've received another request, Meryn said, entering with a stack of correspondence. Kingdom of Talvern wants to join the alliance. They're offering favorable trade terms and military support. What's the catch? They want you to visit, demonstrate your healing abilities personally, prove you're not a threat. Vireya sighed. Of course they do. You don't have to go, Draven said. He'd been reviewing supply reports in the corner. We can negotiate other terms. No, I'll go. Vireya looked at the map, at all the kingdoms gradually coming together. This is what we're building, a world where cooperation matters more than conquest. I need to show I'm committed. Maren nodded. I'll make arrangements. After she left, Draven moved to stand beside Vireya. You've changed the world, he said quietly. 6 months ago, these kingdoms wouldn't have considered alliance. Now they're actively seeking it. We changed it, together. Fair point. He studied the map. What do you think comes next? More work? More politics? More impossible situations that somehow become solvable? Vireya smiled. The usual. You sound almost optimistic. Maybe I am. She looked at him. I spent so long just trying to survive. Now I get to actually build something, create something better than what existed before. A queen who rewrites the world, Draven said. Exactly what I hoped for when I rode into those borderlands looking for an exile everyone had written off. Best decision you ever made? Definitely top 3. She laughed. Only top 3? Well, there was that time I conquered Velmarsh with half the expected forces. That was pretty impressive. Of course you're competitive about this. I'm a king. Competitive comes with the title. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking at the map of a world they were slowly, painstakingly remaking. The gods stirred in Vireya's consciousness. You have done well, sister. We've done well, she corrected. I couldn't have absorbed you without your cooperation. True. A pause. I do not regret my choice. This existence, seeing the world through your eyes, experiencing your connections, it is richer than consuming it ever was. Even though you're not in control, especially because of that. The god's presence felt warm, content. I spent eons trying to dominate, never understanding that cooperation could be stronger. You taught me that. Thank you. Vireya felt tears pricking her eyes, an ancient god thanking her for mercy, for transformation over destruction. Are you all right? Draven asked, seeing her expression. Yes. Just grateful. She wiped her eyes. For all of it. The exile, the borderlands, you finding me, everything that led to this moment. Even the mark? She touched her forehead. The scar had faded but remained visible, a permanent reminder of where she'd been. Especially the mark, she said. It reminds me that I chose this, chose to be more than what others said I was. Draven took her hand. You know, we never finished that conversation about what this partnership is becoming. We've been busy running a kingdom. We have, but he turned to face her fully. I want you to know, this isn't just political convenience anymore. Hasn't been for months. You're important to me. Essential, actually. Vireya's heart raced. Draven, I'm not asking for an answer now, but when you're ready, if you're ready, I'd like this to be real. Not just an arrangement, an actual partnership in every sense. She looked at this man who'd crossed into enemy territory to find her, who'd offered her a choice when everyone else had taken them away, who'd stood beside her through impossible odds. It already is real, she said quietly. Has been since you carried me out of the borderlands and refused to let me give up. His eyes searched hers. You mean that? I'm terrified. And I still don't know if I'm any good at this, but yes, I mean it. He kissed her then, not gentle or chaste like before, deep and certain and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Vireya laughed. What? Draven asked. I went from exile to queen, from worthless to essential, from dying alone to kissing a king in a palace I helped rebuild. She shook her head. My life is absurd. Absurdly good? Absurdly unexpected. But yes, good. He pulled her close. They stood together, looking at the map of their changing world. Outside, the city thrived. Citizens who'd nearly lost everything now built futures. Children played in streets that had run with corruption 6 months ago. The land itself was healing, responding to the transformation. Vireya had been marked as broken, cast aside as defective. Instead, she'd become the bridge between old and new, the healer of corrupted lands. A queen who'd proven that worth wasn't given, it was claimed. The mark on her forehead would always be there, a reminder of pain endured and survived, but it was also a promise that no one, no matter how broken, how scarred, how cast aside, was ever truly worthless. That transformation was possible, that the world could be rewritten. And standing there in the council chamber, crown on her head and love in her heart, Vireya understood something fundamental. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. The real work. Building a better world, maintaining alliances, teaching the next generation that was still ahead. But for the first time in her life, she was ready. Not because she was perfect, not because she had all the answers, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Survival wasn't enough. You had to choose what came after. Choose to build rather than destroy. Choose to heal rather than harm. Choose to become more than the pain that had shaped you. She'd been exiled, marked, thrown away, and she'd risen anyway, proven that true strength wasn't born from power alone, but from the courage to heal, to choose, and to rise beyond the past. Ready for the next impossible challenge? Draven asked. Vireya smiled. Always. Together they turned toward the future and rewrote the world.